Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the PSGL YouTube channel. Tonight, it's round 8 of the PSGL E-Series, where the drivers are going to be taking on the Marina Bay Street Circuit in Singapore, debuting as the first Formula 1 night race all the way back in 2008. This track is renowned for its difficulty and technical corners, making it one of the hardest tracks on the F1 calendar. Who will rise above in this race of attrition and lay claim to the streets of Singapore? My name is Dan Field, and tonight, for the first time, I'm being joined in the PSGL E-Series by Nathan Richards. Nathan, how are you doing?
I'm excited, tired, but I'm sure that this race should make me a lot more awake. It's Singapore. It's either full of action or we have lots of incidents, to say the least, especially down in that middle sector at the end of the first. So hopefully all goes well. We get all the drivers finishing the race. And yeah, it should be a good one. I like the track. Interesting, long, but should create some great action.
Yep, absolutely. It is going to be a very fun one this evening. We've got plenty of star-studded, talented drivers on this grid this evening. Let me know, everyone, if the stream is running okay. It's looking a little bit laggy on the OBS side of things, but hopefully it is all okay on the playback through the stream. But we will quickly, before we get into this one, we'll have a look at the driver lineups for this evening. Veloce Elite are bringing Otis Lawrence and Timon Shooter to the streets of Singapore. Williams, very familiar lineup in this E-Series. Alvaro Carreton and Shanaka Clay. For the first time, we're seeing Tuomas Lamminen in FVR, and a very familiar name for the FVR team is Corden N'Golo. TF10, a man in form at the minute, Dylan Warren, being joined by Max Wiesel, and then Parnell, Ben Shabakonya, a name I've not seen in the PSGL E-Series, but I'm very familiar with in league racing. He's being joined by Istvan Pukki, an all-Hungarian lineup down over at Parnell. RHG is being heated up by Joost Noordijk and Cameron Dells, and SRT, the very familiar lineup of Conor Muir and Leroy Brown. Luke Smith and Rupert Genio at Race Clutch, and then Haas is arguably their strongest lineup. Matthijs van Erven and Thomas Ronhaar. We'll get on to Thomas Ronhaar in a minute as to what's gone on in PSGL very recently. And then VSR is Alexander Kraft, who's really been their main man so far this season. He's being joined by Leonard Goetzer. But Nathan, what can we say about this lineup? It is full of talent. It's packed to the brim.
It is. Every team has got at least one or both drivers that are absolutely at their top limit. One team I'm looking forward to are possibly Race Clutch with Smith and Pedreño. That looks like a really strong lineup. You've got Van Erven and Ron Har. Obviously, Ron Har, one of the quickest, I'd say, in here. And obviously, Van Erven will be good along his side. You've got Carlton and Clay. Obviously, they're leading the standing, so they should be hopefully on good form today and get a few good points on the board.
Yep, absolutely, and that reminds me to have a look at the standings. It is Williams Esports indeed, way out in front at the minute, ahead of Parnell Racing in second, really representing the community-based teams on 232 points. Haas were able to get ahead of Race Clutch after their poor performance last week, but to be fair to the Race Clutch team, a double qualifying ban doesn't make things easy on you. They are just a few points back in P4 with 204. Veloce Elites did struggle a little bit last week. They're on 195, and then Team TF10 doing really well at the minute. They've got two drivers in such strong form with 162 points, very close to Visceral Esports, who are they're only 5 points back in P7. RHG Academy, a little bit disappointing season for them so far, but with their lineup of Noordijk and Dowds, a lot of young talent in that RHG team. Let's hope that they can have a good showing tonight and possibly work themselves closer in that midfield. SRT sit in 9th at the minute, yet to crack the triple digits on 99 points, and then FVR lining up in P10. But so far, at the minute, Richie with Nathan. Sorry, I'm too used to calling you Richie here. But with just 3 races left in this championship, it is definitely looking like it's going Williams' way.
Yes, for sure. They're nearly 100 points ahead, and then you've got the battle between second and fifth, which is what, 37 points or something like that. And then you've got TF10 and Viscarol right behind as well. So that second to seventh could change dramatically, depending on results in this race. Just say Parnell have a race where both their drivers DNF or they end up in the bottom 10. That could then put them under pressure from Haas, Race Clutch, and Veloce. So, people can be losing lots of places, or in the case of TF10, if they can get themselves both in the top 5, for example, they can jump up a few places as well in the standings.
Yeah, it's still very tight-knit at the minute in the midfield pecking order, pretty much from second all the way down until about 7th. It's pretty much, just a few races of strong points within each other, so it definitely can still swing either way, but Williams really are looking to be the team in form. Let us know, everyone, in the live chat who you are looking forward to seeing this evening. I'm just going to have a check in at the lobby. We've got all but one driver so far. I'm just trying to see. It's one of the Alfa Romeos. That'd be Cameron Dowd's not in the lobby yet, and you did touch on it.
Cameron's not racing.
Oh
He's
dear.
just put in the chat. He can't connect to the server.
Oh dear, something
Big
going
shame.
wrong. Yeah, really unlucky.
Issues in the past 3 races as well, both in WR and both the PSGL ones. So big shame for Cameron. Obviously, definitely one of the quick drives I think in this lineup. So it's a shame to see him not race. And I believe we'll have the reserve for RHG. I'm not quite sure who that was, if they run, of course. But if not, that will put RHG at a big disadvantage.
Yeah, I'm going to have a quick check in lineup submission just to see who RHG's reserve. They haven't actually listed a reserve driver in the submission, so fingers crossed that they can find someone, but they might actually have to take a penalty at some point. Yeah, unlucky for RHG. Hopefully Cameron Dowd can get his internet issues sorted. It seems to be a running theme for him, which is, I think, very unfortunate given how talented of a driver he is, and he really doesn't get the chance to actually drive in competitive lobbies like this. So really unfortunate for him, but the RG, they're just gonna have to recuperate and move on. But Nathan, before we get into qualifying, we are not too far off of starting the Q1 session. Let's talk about Thomas Ronhaar. Of course, in PSGL in the main series. There was a little bit of controversy at the final race of the season, and unfortunately that man has lost his championship. And do you think he's going to come into this one with a little chip on his shoulder?
Yes, definitely. I think obviously it was they ended tied on points, so technically you can both say they deserved it. They both ended on the same amount of points. Obviously Barry got it on Kate Backs. He had, I think, was it 4-2 in terms of wins. But I think Ron is definitely going to wanting to prove himself again that he's at that top level. We know he is, but he's still gonna be fighting for these wins, even though it's not PSGL F1. It's a bit different. Money is on the line this time, so that will probably give him even more motivation to try and get to that top spot. And I think when it comes to qualifying, Thomas is one of the ones which I think we can have a safe bet on saying could possibly take pole.
Yeah, definitely. Thomas Ronhaar, pretty much all season long in the E-Series, he has been the man to beat in qualifying. You typically see him, if he's not on pole, he's on the front row. So Thomas Ronhaar, we do have to look out for him this evening. But of course, you can never count out names like Alvaro Carreton, like Shanika Clay, and especially the Veloce boys as well. I think Otis Lawrence, he has been, he's been sort of the rising star in the F1 esports scene, and even though he's not really got that experience on his side, we do know that he is very quick. We are about to get ready to go into this session. Going to be very exciting, this qualifying format. Of course, it's the full Q1, Q2 and Q3 running. We're going to have the bottom 5 drivers eliminated from this Q1 session, and then so on and so forth until the top 10 are fighting it out in Q3 for pole position. But unfortunately, Nathan, we've not got Cameron Dowds in this session. We've only got 19 runners.
Nope. Big shame. And apparently, it looks like Nordyke has got a qualifying ban because RHG are only running one car.
Oh,
so not good for RHG. They've got one driver starting last.
Yeah,
which isn't ideal, but they've got a lot to do today. They're 8th in the standings. They're quite, I'd say, far off that top of the midfield. So this is definitely going to be a lot of work for Yost to do. But he's been around for a while. He's got good pace, so hopefully he can try and bounce back and get himself into some good positions in the race.
Yeah, absolutely. Joost Noordijk is a driver that I'm very familiar with, stemming all the way back onto F1 2019. Himself and Timon Shooter, they're both racing on this grid. I do love to mention it. It was in a very small little niche community. It was just called F1 Racing League, but they were both a part of it, fighting for races in and out, and I was commentating on them. Great times they were, and they are still going today, and I'm very excited to let everyone know that we are in qualifying. But of course, Nathan, very familiar scenes. We're not seeing anyone out on circuit for the time being. If I just bring you over to the race scene, complete ghost town out on circuit, but it shouldn't be too long before we see runners, probably on the intermediate tyres, out on track.
Well, that's the normal procedure, isn't it? Onto the inters for the first run in Q1. One thing I'm going to ask though, who is Photon? Is that
would be Benz Jabo Konyi. Yeah.
Okay. Because I didn't recognise the name, and I know for a fact we got no one called Photon on the lineup, so just wanted to double check. And there's an Alpine going out, so I think it's an Alpine or a Williams, one of the two. I want to see who it is.
That would be Rumpadreno exiting the circuit. Interestingly enough, on a set of a hard compound of tyre, we typically see the runners exiting the pit lane on a set of the intermediate tyres. But very interesting to see the hards being deployed. We never see them in qualifying. It's pretty much softs throughout. But of course, this is the best race tyre. They last the longest out of all of them. You get the longevity out of them, and pretty much the tyre that all of the drivers start on. So it's very interesting to see that Pedroneo's come out here.
Looking in the chat, apparently it's raining in the race.
Oh, okay.
So that could throw some things into it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Singapore's circuit, very typical that we do see rain, but I guess that is why that Rumpadreno has exited the pit lane on a set of the hard compound tyres. He wants to save up those intermediates and then, of course, use them in the race.
Then obviously, because sometimes for the weather predictions for different drivers it says different things, so we could have people running on going into the race on a dry setup, which luckily around somewhere like here wouldn't harm you too much, but it still isn't ideal if you're on a wet track with a dry setup, and a lot of other drivers are on the wet setup. So if anyone's ended up doing that and going onto the dry setup, they might have made a bit of a mistake going into the race, if it does rain, of course.
Yeah, of course, the setup differences are so crucial at this level of play. You can get away with it in the lower levels of league racing and in the lower tiers of PSGL, but when you're at this peak performance, of being on the level of F1 esports drivers and the esports of next generation, you do have to get the setup pinpoint accurate. As Rumpadreno, he gets his lap underway. We'll see what he can do on his set of the hard compound tyres. It's interesting to see that Max Wiesel, Tuomas Lamminen and Leonard Goetze, all drivers racing for community-based teams, they've come out on a set of the intermediate tyres, whereas Rumpadreno, he's using these hards. I'm not too sure what really the call is at the moment, because of course you're not going to be using too many intermediate tyres come race time. I think if you have 3 sets, which I'm not too sure about the tyre allocation, but if you have 3 sets, you might as well use the first one in qualifying just to make sure that your setup is completely perfect.
Yep, and obviously Ruben going purple in the first sector, but it won't really matter, he's on hards. I'm not actually sure if the hards are quicker than the inters or not, because for some reason the inters don't seem very slow in this game. They actually seem quite quick. So maybe these hards will be slower than the inters, I'm not sure. And Ruben just currently coming through the Singapore Sting section, now in towards the hairpin, then at turn 13, and a bit of a slide on the exit, but obviously he's on the hard tyres. They're not going to have as much grip at all as the softs, and because it's the first lap of the session, it's Q1, there will be not much grip on the track at all, because the track evolution will hopefully get better soon in this session. Ruben's still sliding around as he comes through now into the end part of this second sector, in towards the bridge section very shortly, and he'll either bail into the pits or he will set this lap. We'll have to see as he comes into the final few corners in towards turn 20.
Yeah, Rumpadreno has looked all over the place on this lap. We'll see what he can do though as he comes through the final corner. He's not even pushing on the ERS. You can see the blinking red lights on that Alpine. He comes across the line at 1 minute 42.291 is the opening time of this session. Tuomas Lamminen and Max Wiesel both darted back into the pit lane, but Leonard Goetze is still going on his set of the intermediate tyres. Let us know, everyone, in the live chat who you are looking forward to seeing in this session. Plenty of talent throughout the grid. You have to look at the Haas boys, Thomas Ronhaar and Matthijs van Erven, both Dutch legends at the minute. Of course, Thomas Ronhaar losing the PSGL Championship. He's definitely going to have a fire reignited in his soul to do well this evening. And Matthias van Erven, we know he's got the longevity. He's been a part of the PSGL scene for so long at this point. I think I remember commentating on him all the way back in season 28, I think it was, when I started doing PSGL F1, as Leonard Goetze comes across the line in 1 minute 41.581. He's actually quicker than Ruben Pedreño on his intermediate tyres than Pedreño was on his hards. 12 minutes and a half left to go. Not too long until we see drivers out on a set for soft compound tyre.
Yep. Normally we see quite a few more out on the Inters, so it's very surprising to see only 2 lap times set so far, but I presume in the next few minutes that's where we'll see everyone get out onto the track and start their first qualifying runs. Obviously, of the bottom 5 get dropped out of this session, and considering the grid's so close, you've got to make sure you make no mistakes, because one minor mistake you could lose a 10th. That could be the difference between you in the top 10 and between you in the bottom 5.
Yep, of course though there might be a little bit less pressure in this Q1 session, given that Cameron Dowds isn't isn't racing. We've only got 19 runners as Pedreño comes across the line to improve to a 41.1, but we've only got 19 drivers in this session. Add on to the fact that Joost Noordijk has got a qualifying ban due to RAG only running 1 car this evening. It means only 3 drivers really are going to be losing out on qualifying based on their pace, so there's going to be a little bit of less pressure for some of these guys. It's also going to be a great opportunity for the likes of the FVR boys and the SRT drivers to get out of Q1. We typically see the Ferraris and Aston Martins crash out quite early in qualifying, with a few shock performances as of recently. I think Gordon N'Golo for the past 2 races in a row has actually made it into Q3, so don't count anyone out of this session, but it definitely is going to be a great opportunity for some of these teams lower down the order to get themselves up the grid and on a circuit that is very hard to overtake, potentially score themselves some points.
Yep, definitely. It's a great opportunity for Gordon N'Golo. Didn't have the best start, but as of recent, he's been on some really good pace. So getting himself into Q3 would be good for him again. Thomas Lammen, and also a very quick driver, obviously in the other FVR car. So hopefully he can get himself into Q2 or Q3. FVR need to get some good points on the board. Possibly a top 7 or top 8 finish would be nice for them, but at the moment just about 15 points behind, I believe, SRT in the standings in 10th, so not too far off. But you've got 3 rounds. They make one more mistake and that could possibly be over for them. And Pedreño on another lap up to the line. So I don't know why Pedreño is going for some long runs on the hards, but he is, and he improves to a 40.673. So still no one out though. Oh, there we are. We have people out. We have a Red Bull. That I believe might be Dylan Warren. Yes, it is. Dylan Warren just coming down to the exit of the pit lane. So now we'll obviously see a few other drivers also come out. We've got, I believe, Aston Martin and AlphaTauri also coming out the pit lane and heading in towards turn 1.
Yep, Dylan Warren exiting the pit lane first for the TF10 team, and he is a driver that's definitely not going to want to run into Thomas Ronhart at any point in this race. These two have got quite a lot of history as of recent, stemming back numerous races both in the main PSGL series and indeed in the E series. And of course it was an incident between the pair of them, I think. I'm not too sure, I didn't read up on the details, but I do believe that some incident between Dylan Warren and Thomas Ronhart was what actually lost him the PSGL title. So definitely this rivalry between the pair of them, whatever it is really, is definitely going to be at its peak. Dylan Warren's just let the 2 AlphaTauris go through. That'll be both Parnell boys of Istvan Pukki and Bence Jabot-Conyi. Bence Jabot-Conyi is ahead on circuit, a former Ferrari development driver, now racing for Parnell. He's been a part of the PC league racing scene for some time. Of course, there was an insurgence of console drivers, at the end of F1 2020 coming over to the PC platform, but throughout it all, Bence Jabot-Conyi was always on the PC, so he's been a bit of a namesake on the PC grids, and he's coming in towards the second sector, into sector 3 actually, on a set the soft compound tyres, and it looks like Nathan, he'll be the first one to get his lap underway.
Yep, definitely. As of recent, I haven't really seen much of Bence Jabot-Conyi, to be fair. He was around for a lot, but then kind of hidden away recently, so it's nice to see him back driving again, and he's just coming through into the final sector to begin his first lap for the first time. His teammate is Istvan Pukki, who's just behind as well, going to be setting his first lap as now Bence Jabot-Conyi comes through into the final corner to begin his first flying lap of the session.
Here is now headed up in towards turn number 1 and 2. It's a fast chicane through here, keeping it in 4th. The drivers rarely touch a gear beneath 3rd, as short shifting up from 3rd into 4th to get the traction on the exit. The power down as early as possible in towards this next right-hander and onto only one of 3 DRS straights around this track. We're definitely going to see a lot of the brunt of the overtakes in towards turn number 7 as he reached the braking point just after the 100-meter board, kissing the inside apex and then running it through into the second sector with the walls right next to the track. There's no margin for error at any point through here. Ben Ocon, I'm not too sure if he's pushing at the minute. He's really revving it out in 4th, as headed down now into what was formerly known as a Singapore sling. Really would kill you if you went over the curbs there. Formerly, of course, it was taken out, I believe, at the end of 2012 in towards 2013, as out of the Anderson Bridge comes Ocon in towards the next DRS straight. We'll see what his sector time is. The end of sector 2 is currently on a 1 minute 3.690. It's looked a little bit scrappy so far for Ben Ocon, but Nathan, he is still going here.
Yep, definitely. The grip's going to be lower at the start of this Q1 session, so drivers will be making a few mistakes, maybe having a little loss of traction on the exits, but obviously, you know, they've got more runs to do as well after this, so he wants to get a good banker on, but as long as he can get a solid banker and he can get back out on his second run and hopefully get himself out of that Q1 elimination. But into the final corner, hits the curve very nicely up towards the line and sets a 1:36.148. Very nice lap there from Benson Bacuni, as his Van Pookie goes even quicker, 4/10 over his teammate. Very nice there, 35.727. So it seems that Benson's got a lot of time to gain in the next part of this session.
Yep, absolutely, as Luke Smith just split the 2 Parnell boys. Otis Lawrence coming through the final corner now, as we'll see what he can do. It's only P3 for the Veloce Elite representative. He's just gone ahead of Max Wiesel. I believe one of the FER boys either just starting his lap or invalidated. Shanaka Clay has come across the line to go P5. We'll see where his teammate is at the minute. He's coming through the final corner now to come across the line, and it's only P4 for Caraton so far. We'll check in on one of the VSR boys. I believe it is Leonard Goetze coming through the final sector. His teammate Alexander Kraft just gone into P2 as Thomas Ronha, sorry, not into P2. Thomas Ronha goes into P2 ahead of him. See what Leonard Goetze can do as he comes through the final corner now to come across the line. He goes to the top of the order. 1 minute 35.679 from Leonard Goetze. Matthijs van Erven's just come across the line to only go P14 for Haas. Very impressive time from the VSR representative. Typically, throughout this season, it has been Alexander Kraft really performing in qualifying for this VSR team. But today, Leonard Goetze, really strong indeed.
Yeah, Goetze and Pookie, really nice times there, 0.6 and 0.7. Ronha, a 10th off those. It's not very often we see Ronha behind. Obviously, he's got a bit of time to gain in the next part of the session, but I'm sure a 0.8 should be good enough to get out of Q1. But big shame for Van Erven, who's down in 14th. If it stays that way, he could possibly drop out of Q1. Nordyke will have to retire as he can't set a lap as he's got the qualifying ban. So Kodo and Ngola also now coming through into the bridge section. And we've got yellow flags invalidated, so he's not going to be setting that lap. Lefted currently coming out of sector 1, and he's invalidated as well. So they've got to go for one more run and hopefully make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. As Otis Lawrence, he believes he's safe in this qualifying session. He's retired on a 1 minute 35.879. You'd expect then all the drivers up ahead to retire as well. That'd be Leonard Goetze, Istvan Pookie, Thomas Ronha and Luke Smith. Alvaro Caraton sitting just about a 10th behind Lawrence at the minute. Seems like he'll want to come out once again, but it seems like around this tricky circuit there's a big gap in at the field. We'll see who at the end of this session is eventually eliminated. Currently in the drop zone, it is 4 drivers without a lap time at the minute. Of course, Cameron Dowd's not participating this evening, so we've only got 19 runners, and Joost Noordijk has a qualifying ban that leaves lefted. That's Connor Muir for SRT, Dylan Warren in TF10, and then Corden Ngolo in the drop zone. Those will be the 3 drivers that are eliminated on pace. But now, Nathan, with just over 3 minutes left to go, we've got some drivers coming back out onto the circuit. We'll see what we can do as we're getting ready for the Banzai phase.
And I believe Ronha is actually on a second lap. He did a bit of a cool down lap after his first lap, and he's on it again now, currently coming out of turn 1 and 2. Ron having a big slot on the exit, but catches it very nicely now in towards Turn 5, very nice. Hopping the curb on the exit, on the entry into the exit now. Very nice. DRS open, Nordyke has retired. Obviously, that puts lefty Dylan and Codorn in the drop zone. And one has let off. So it was a bit of a push, but not an actual lap. But if Dylan was to be out of this session, that would really not be good for him at all. Dylan's been on some really good form recently in these past few races, so it'd be nice if you could get himself back out into Q3 yet again. So he's got to make sure this next lap he wants to push so he can get himself out the bottom 5. But he's got to make sure he doesn't bin it by pushing too hard or making too many mistakes. Because if you hit the wall here, it's more likely a lap over, even if it's a slight tap. Because a little bit of damage around here is not ideal at all.
Yep, absolutely. This is a circuit that is very unforgiving indeed, so it is very easy to run ever so slightly wide, then take just that slight bit of wing damage, even if it's lime green. You know, as I said previously, you can get away with sort of stuff like that in the lower tiers, but once you're at this level, every bit of downforce matters. So if you're losing that by chipping off your end plate or something, you know, that is really going to put a dampener on your lap. As we're just seeing everyone now coming on their out laps. Thomas Ronhart should be retiring at the end of this one as he comes back into the pit lane. We've got everyone from 6th downward on an out lap here. As we've got Bence Jabo-Konya. We saw him to be the first man to set a lap time in this session. He's now headed through the final corner. We'll see what he can do, so we'll get his second run underway.
Yep, and Photon or Ben Sabacon is coming down towards turn 1. He's 11th at the moment, so pretty close to the drop zone because we've got Lefty, Dylan, and Codon who've yet to set laps, and also Alexander, Timon, and Matthias and Ruben all need to improve. So he's got to make sure he can get himself possibly into the high 35s to be safe in this session. I believe a 35.9, 35.8 could be where the cut-off zone is, but he's up by a tenth and a half nearly in that first sector. Goes purple in the first sector. Very nice, now in towards turn 8, and this time you can see he's got a lot more grip and a lot more rear end on this second lap than he did on his first. That's due to track evolution, and also could have had a little bit of a change up with setups and all stuff like that. As he now comes through in towards the sling section at turn 12. Now in towards 13, he's got to be very careful not to lock up there. Does it nicely on the exit. Got to try not to spin. Perfect so far from Photon or Bence. I keep getting mixed up as he comes now into the end of that sector 2, and he's up by 2.5 tenths, a 3.4 split.
Yep, it's looking good for Bence Jabo-Konya as the clock is about to strike 0. One of the Williams just come across the line at the right time. That's either Caraton or Shinaka Clay. I believe it's Shinaka Clay, as now Jabo-Konya coming up towards the last few corners around this circuit. He's found a very nice improvement in Sector 1 and 2, and we'll see what he can do. He's got most of the track all to himself. There's not a car in sight until we get to time and shooter, but now through the final corner, Bence Jabo-Konya currently on a 1 minute 36.148. Can he get himself into Q2 with P4 time 1 minute 35.828? I believe that'll be safe enough for the Parnell representative. Let's have a check-in on time and shooter as he's coming through the final 2 corners, now up by almost 0.2 of a second, a namesake in the PSGL grid. We'll see what he can do as he comes across the line now. Can he get himself into Q2? He does for the time being. He's in P9. That should be safe for now, but we'll have to check in on him a little bit later along the road as Leroy Brown has come across the line to set a time, putting himself into P7. Colin Muir only can manage P12. He could be in a spot of bother as we've got Dylan Warren in towards P3. He is alert on a seat circuit this time by as now Shinaka Clay through the final corner now. We'll see what he can do. He goes ahead of Dylan Warren, a 1 minute 35.747. Very nice indeed from him. Up next will be Rumpedrenio, currently in that drop zone. Can he get himself out the bottom 5? No, he cannot, unfortunately. We are going to be losing Rumpedrenio from this session. Matthijs van Erven, where can he nestle his Haas car as he's in that drop zone at the moment? Come across the line now to go P4 and put Tuomas Laminen out of this session as Alexander Kraft with a clutch time there to get himself into P5 and out of the drop zone. Colin Muir, unfortunately, is the expenditure in this session. He has already finished his lap and is out of this session. Alvaro Caraton doesn't see a need to complete his run. He'll come back into the pit lane and live to fight another day. But at the end of this Q1 session, eliminated from qualifying, Colin Muir, Tuomas Laminen and Rumpedrenio, of course, Joost Noordijk serving the qualifying ban for RHG. That brings us to the end of Q1.
Yep, Alvaro was actually up by a tenth and a half on his lap, but invalidated at the end of sector 2. Hence why he had to come back into the pits. It was very close to him actually, to not end up outside that Q1 elimination zone. But big shame for Thomas Lemon. And he's one of those drivers I've seen him a lot. He looks quite quick, but in 17th it's not ideal. But he's got a lot of work to do in the next part of the race. But if he has that damage limitation in the race, it should help him, because around here it's very easy for people to get wing damage, have collisions. So hopefully he can get his Ferrari a few places higher than his qualifying position.
Absolutely, his teammate Corn N'Golo surviving in this session, but it is Leonard Gertzer for VSR topping qualifying 1. A very nice time indeed from him. Istvan Pukki in P2, Chinaka Clay in P3. Matthias Van Erven was able to escape danger and he nestles his Haas into P4. And Alexander Kraft rounding out the top 5. Dylan Warren, Thomas Ronhart, Jabra Konyi, Luke Smith and Otis Lawrence rounding out the top 10. And then just about surviving in this session is Corn N'Golo, Leroy Brown, Max Wiesel, Alvaro Caraton and Timon Shooter. They're being eliminated from qualifying. It is SRT left. That's Conor Muir, Thomas Lamanen, Rune Petronio and Joost Noordijk. But that brings us to the end of Q1. And I think you got to say, the big name going out here, Rune Petronio for Race Clutch.
Yes, that is a very big surprise. A 36.2 is 5 tenths off, I believe, what Leonard Gertzer did. So big shame for Ruben, isn't it? Really, he's one. Going into here, I would have said, he's easily one of the drivers to get into Q3, but starting 19th, it's not ideal at all. Luke Smith obviously making it through into Q2, so hopefully he can get himself into Q3 and try and get some good puts on the board for race. Which obviously it's not over for Ruben, but he's got a lot of places to make up, hasn't he? Really, in this in the race.
Yep, absolutely. In a circuit that is very difficult to overtake on, of course. Singapore, it is going to be a big challenge for the Race Clutch representative, but we've seen the kind of form that he is in and his prowess when he gets in the F1 car. We'll see what he can do. This Q1 is about to get underway. We'll join you once again trackside after a quick word from our sponsors at GT Omega. Welcome back, trackside everyone here, and we've got a whole flurry of cars exiting the pit lane on their outlap, a very familiar sight in Q2. Of course in Q1, drivers not exiting the pit lane until 10 minutes, and then everyone at the start of Q2 coming out straight away to set their banker times. But Nathan, of course this will be on a scrub set of the tyres. We'll see what they can do as Matthias Van Erven, he's the first one out.
Yep, just currently coming through in towards turn 14, and there's loads of cars behind him, both the Alfa Romeo, McLaren, sorry, and I believe there was also Williams behind him. So the traffic will start building up as we head into the final set. That's a spin, I believe, from one of the McLarens. That was Otis Lawrence. No, it wasn't. It was his teammate. Timon Shooter had a bit of a spin. Then at turn 16, and we have Matthias Van Erven coming into the final couple of corners. But some drivers will take some used sets. Some might also go for a new set, depending on what kind of qualifying run they have planned for the session. But Matthias Van Erven now heading into turn 1. The first driver to set a lap in Q2, finished 4th, I believe, in Q1. So he's got to hopefully try and get himself back into that top 4 for Q3 as he comes through now in towards turns 4 and 5. Heading now down with the DRS open, down towards turn 7 in the end of sector 1. Let's see what time he does in that first sector. It's a 26.8. Remember, he will be on scrub tyres, so it might not be his optimal time at all. As he now comes in towards turn 8, very close to the track limits there at turn 7 on the exit. And now heading in towards turn 10. Very nice. You've got to be very careful not to hit the one on the exit. Very close there from Van Erven. A bit of a mistake, but corrects it perfectly. Now in towards the sling section at turns 11 and 12. Be very careful here. You've got to be careful on the power, and you can see getting really close to the wall as he comes through that corner now in towards 13. You've got to be careful at the hairpin. Tries not to lock up as well on the exit. You've got to get on the power nice and early. Very close to the wall on the exit. DRS open. Let's see what he can do in this middle sector. It'll be 103.802. Now into the final parts of this second sector. Looking very nice from Van Erven so far.
Yep, absolutely. Of course, this will be on a scrub set of the tyres, and that is just for these guys to set their bankers. That's why we see everyone pretty much coming out very early on in Q2. Alexander Kraft has had an incident down at, it was that in the second sector. Is that near the Singapore Sling or the Anderson Bridge? And oh dear, something's gone wrong for Alexander Kraft, but very early on with 11 minutes left to go, Nathan, we've already lost the driver here.
Yeah, that's not ideal. And like I said before, this is a mistake drivers will be making. Lando Gertz is invalidated on his time. But Van Erven lost a lot of time in that final sector because he had a big snap coming out of turn 23. So he's going to have to improve a lot more on his second run. Leroy Brown, 36.8 on, I believe, scrub tyres, and only 2 drivers out of nearly 10 who went out, setting a lap.
Yeah, a lot of invalidations coming out through here as Leonard Gertz is the last one to come back into the pit lane. He invalidated his lap at some point along the way, and that means a lot of guys aren't going to have the delta. Of course, setting it on a scrub set of the tyres, having that delta time will allow for you to have a slight psychological boost, knowing that you're improving on your previous best lap. I think it gives you a little bit more confidence along the way. But with just over 10 minutes left to go in this session, Matthijs van Erven is topping the order at the minute, 1 minute 36.531 for him. Leroy Brown is the other competitor to set an lap time. He's about 3.5 tenths off the back of the Haas representative, and Leroy Brown, I think, driving for the fan favourite SRT, the driver that certainly everyone does want to do well. And I saw a tweet earlier from the Streamline Racing Team's Twitter about how in a practice session Leroy Brown and Connor Mule were both able to out-qualify Matthijs van Erven and Thomas Ronhaar. So there were some high expectations coming into this one. Leroy Brown so far living up to them. Connor Mule, unfortunately, out of qualifying. It's not looking good for SRT.
Nope, it's not. And we've got Sabakonya coming out on track now. Van Erven into the pit lane. I believe that will also be Leroy Brown following him. But we have both the Mercedes, that's Leonard Gertz, as well as Ben Sabakonya out on track to set their first run of Q2. And the fact they're setting it 9 minutes, it's not ideal. They should have really got a lap in before, because now it puts them at a bit of a more compromising position. They've not got a banker, so they've got to push a lot now. And the issue they have is if they push too hard, they could bin it, or they could lose a lap to track limits. And if they don't push enough, they're going to be at the top out of Q2, because at the moment the drop zone, people are out. Is Tobin Shooter, Luke Smith, Shinaka Clay, Kodorn Ingolo, and Ben Sabakonya. Obviously, that will probably change. Binners have also still got to set laps, but still, you're in that bottom 5 that already puts you at a disadvantage, because you know for a fact you've got to get a lap on the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've just seen I've seen a few questions actually so far this stream about what the E-Series actually is, and from my point of view, it takes the team aspect of F1 esports and brings it into league racing, and drivers' standings completely disregarded through here, so it really does emphasize the level of teamwork that the drivers have to use to win this championship. And of course it is for a £1,000 prize pool, so there is a lot of incentive for these guys to work it out very strong between the pair of them, as Salvo Conyi is now coming through the final sector. We'll see what he can do as he begins his his outlap. But at the moment, Nathan, got plenty of drivers out on circuit. It is all but one, of course, that one being in the pit lane. Alexander Kraft, as Sabakonya, he gets underway.
Yep, in towards turn 1, and obviously with Alexander being out of the session, that now means technically we've only got 4 drivers really who are going to drop out, who are actually going to set laps, unless you have more DNF, then that could make it even more. But for now, it's just 4 really that have got to set laps to get through, because obviously Alexander will most likely drop down to 15th, unless others don't set a time. But Sabakonya just currently coming to the end of that first sector, and he's up by 3 tenths on his previous lap, 26.584 for Sabakonya. He now comes through in towards turn 8, now in towards turn 9. He's got to hook this up perfectly. He's got to push, but not too hard. There's still 7 minutes left, so if he does make a mistake, he has got more than enough time to go again. As he now comes through in towards the sling section at turns 11 through to 12. Got to be very careful here with the curves and also on the exit, because sometimes here, if you make a mistake, which he's done, he's had to lift up a little bit there, just not to hit the wall and have a spin. Misses the apex completely down at 13, so that's going to compromise his sector 2 heavily, and will probably lose a little bit of time there. But he's probably still going to finish the lap. Anyway, he's up by, I think, 5 tenths on his previous lap of 3.3. Split for sector 1 and 2. Now currently coming out of turn 14 towards 15 and 16. You're going to hook it up right here as well. This is another difficult place. And you can easily get the track limits if you ride the curb too much, get a bit of bottoming out, which is what you don't want at all. Now into the final section under the bridge and in towards turns 20, 21, 22 and 23. He's got to hook this up perfectly, which he's seemed to do so far. Very close to the wall there out of 21, but into the final couple of corners. Let's see what time Ben Sabaconi can put on the board. It's a 35.536.
Yeah, looked a little bit scrappy from Javo Corny, but Leonard Goetze goes into P2. The two Williams boys in the final sector being led by by Shanaka Clay. At the minute, it's Van Pookie's found himself in P3 as here comes Shanaka Clay now through the final corner. Going to go P4. We'll see where his teammate can place his Williams. Can he go to the top of the order? Can't for the time being. Both of them 4th and 5th is Corden N'Golo. Been a real surprise in the last few weeks of qualifying. He goes to the top of the order. Simon Shooter now through the final corner. Can he beat his teammate who's in P5? No, he can't. As through the final corner now, I believe it is not Dylan Moore. It would be Max Viso, I think. Yeah, he was invalid on his lap, unfortunately, but that would have been quick enough for the fastest time in qualifying so far. Thomas Ronhaar on an absolute flyer at the minute. Now through the final sector, the Dutchman who unfortunately lost his PSGL title just yesterday. He comes across the line 1 minute 35.287. A very nice time indeed from him. I think that's going to be a one and done from the Dutchman. We'll see what his teammate can do. He'll back it out into the pit lane. Matthijs van Erven not going to be completing that lap. He sits in P10 for the time being, and Leroy Brown is also invalidated on his lap, and he'll be returning to the garage. Dylan Warren at the minute, I don't believe he's on a competitive time. What about Luke Smith? In the final sector, he doesn't appear to be going any quicker than he was previously. So with just under 5 minutes left to go, Thomas Ronhaar, the clear favourite at the top of the order. I'll just get the gap to leader, and you can see it's almost 2 2.75 tenths of a second. Incredible stuff from 2 tenths and a quarter for Thomas Ronhaar. That's what I meant to say. He is ahead of Corden N'Golo, but from Corden N'Golo downwards, it's a very close qualifying.
It is. It's nearly less than 10th actually between 2nd and 6th. That's code on down to Otis. And that's a yellow flag because I think a few people are backing themselves up ready to start their, I believe it will be their final runs of this session. But the drop zone so far, it's Luke Smith, Alexander Kraft, Dylan Warren, Max Wiesel and Leroy Brown, both TF10s. Could possibly be out of this session, which is not really good for them at all, is it, to be out? Considering their fight after that top battle, 2nd to 6th, 12th and 13th would not be good.
Absolutely, TF10 definitely want to get into the top 10, even though they've lost quite a lot of points so far to Parnell. They definitely want to be fighting for bragging rights, just as who is the best community team. And of course, Parnell having such a strong season so far, especially in the early parts. You know, it is going to be very difficult for TF10 and VSR and SRT and FER as well to actually catch up to them. But of course, with 3 rounds to go, anything can happen. And anything will happen as Thomas Ronhaar comes back into the pit lane. He retires from the session with just 3 minutes left to go. We've got one of the Alpines exiting the pit lane. Of course, the lone Alpine in this session is the Race Clutch representative of Luke Smith. He's now exiting his garage on another fresh set of the soft compound tyres. You can see the shine on the Red Bull tyre that he has strapped on to his car. We'll see what he can do. He's come out a little bit earlier than anticipated. He's got one of the Mercedes. That'll be Leonard Goetze. Of course, his teammate Alexander Kraft crashing at the early points just about 10 minutes ago. He crashed out at the Singapore Sling. Leonard Goetze going to be hoping for a different fortune to his teammate, as now everyone exiting the pit lane. One of them being Shanaka Clay as well, not safe at the minute on a 1 minute 35.6. And Nathan, just given how close this grid is, I'd say everyone except Thomas Ronhaar has got to come out on circuit, set another lap.
For sure, because the laps will just keep crumbling down, and obviously Luke will be the first one to set a lap. Seeing where Luke goes, that'll be where we really see where that benchmark is, because you know, as we saw in the last session, we had Sabacon who didn't set the best first lap, but at the end of the session up into 4th, same as Van Erven. So you know the times will crumble down, so everyone will go out. Sabacon hasn't gone out though, which is a bit of a surprise. So we won't be ending this session here. We'll have to just keep an eye on his little dots on the map to see if he does go out, but I don't think he will. Van Erven's coming out now. He's just coming out of the pit lane. And the other 2 cars in the pit lane are Ronhaar, who's retired after setting his really good lap there, 35.2. And the other one is Alexander Kraft's Mercedes, who crashed out at who crashed out at, I believe, turn 13. And yeah, that is Benson Abercrombie thinking he's safe enough to get out of this qualifying too. But I think a .5 will be cutting it very fine, isn't it?
Yeah, that's confidence from Zabo Konya that he thinks he is safe in this session. Maybe a little bit overzealous from him though, because there is still plenty of drivers. There's 3 runners left in this session without a time on the board, and also Van Erven and Leroy Brown are yet to set a representative lap time in this session. I believe that we are going to see a few shock exits. Ben Abercrombie, he might have shot himself in the foot by retiring and not coming out again just to be safe, but watching Luke Smith on his lap at the minute, we'll see him come in towards Memorial Corner at turn number 7, leading out in towards Stamford. We'll see what he can do as he's keeping it very tight to the walls, using all the track possible. A little bit of a slide out of turn number 8, but then keeping his foot in through turn number 9. He's looking very solid on his lap so far. I saw a little bit of a lock up from him earlier on. Through now the Singapore Sling, where it really does get technical through here, and you have to keep your wits about you because the walls come at you like a bullet. Is now in towards turn number 10. I believe that's turn number 12 actually, if I'm not mistaken. And he's done that very nicely indeed. He did just about keep to his apex, but he did lock up his inside front left. Now through the second sector split with 15 seconds left to go in qualifying. Oh dear, Matthijs van Erven, he is cutting it very fine. I do think he is going to get to the line in time to start his lap. Luke Smith will have no such issues, as now in towards the final sector, where it's just a series of 90-degree lefts and rights. Not too difficult through here, as now the clock has struck 0. No new laps can be begun, and everyone has got to set their times now through the final 2 corners for Luke Smith. We'll see what he can do as he comes up towards the line. It is P2 for him, and he gets himself, I'd say, safely in towards the next session. Up next, it will be Leonard Goetze topping Q1. Can he top Q2? Not for the time being. He does the exact same lap time as Luke Smith, a 1:35.396 from him. Up next to the line is Leroy Brown. He's got Shanaka Clay just behind him on circuit, as Leroy Brown can only find himself in P9. Not a very strong showing from the FSRT representative. Shanaka Clay to the line can only manage P6 for the time being. We'll see if that's good enough to get him into the next session. Unfortunately for Dylan Warren, his qualifying is going to be over. He's invalidated his lap time. Up next will be Max Wiesel and the 2 Veloce representatives now through the final corner for Max Wiesel. We'll see what he can do. His teammate eliminated, and he puts Leroy Brown in danger. It's P9 for him. Otis Lawrence is coming back into the pit lane as Timon Shooter goes into 9th, eliminating Leroy Brown, and now Max Wiesel out of this session. And I think one of the big names that we are seeing here, Matthijs van Erven, invalid on his lap. He is going to be out of qualifying. Here's Van Pookie, came across the line to set a 1:35.314. That will get himself into the next session, but Matthijs van Erven out of qualifying here.
Yep, that is really not ideal for Haas, considering they're the ones trying to close in that battle for P2 and also possibly try and close the battle for P1. Not sure if it would be enough, but they want to at least close it a little bit. 13th is not ideal. Tieter, another team as well, 11th and 14th. Considering they're on, they're on a charge to get some championship positions, and they're, both sort of said outside the top 10. Not ideal at all. Leroy Brown, another one to talk about, out in Q2, but still not too bad of a lap. Was just a 10th off the cut-off zone, but there we are, 4 tenths between P1 and P10. Very nice.
Yep, absolutely. A very close session indeed. This Van Pookie did get close to Thomas Ronhaar, but his time was just unattainable. And now that he's done what, 2 laps? I think he's done in total in qualifying. He's going to have a bunch of fresh sets of tyres that he can utilise in Q3. It'll be a big advantage. It's Van Pookie in P2, and Courtney Golo retains P3, and that's 3 races in a row that he's found himself in Q3. Luke Smith, Leonard Goetze, Zabraconi, Clay, Lawrence, Carroton and Shooter round out the top 10. Then it is Max Wiesel, Leroy Brown, Matthijs van Erven, and I missed out the last names there. I think it was Dylan Warren being eliminated. Yep. And then Alexander Kraft, who had his crash. Big talking points at the end of that session. Thomas Ronhaar delighted with his performance. His teammate, though, Matthijs van Erven, not making it into Q3.
Yep, but only 3 teams make both their drivers through into Q3. That is Parnell Racing with Istvan and Bentz, McLaren Veloce with Otis and Timon. Then finally, it will be Williams with Alvaro and Shanaka. So only 3 teams getting all their drivers through. So hopefully these teams can pay off easily and get some good points. Obviously, Parnell, second in the championship. being both in the top 10 would be nice. Hopefully, can get themselves both in the top 5 if they can get some good runs in the session. But then again, it could rain in the race, we've heard. So maybe that can cause some issues for different drivers. Some drivers might have gone for a wet setup, hence why there was a little bit slower in qualifying. But I'm sure that will all be cleared up when we get into the race. But Leonard Gertz will be the first out on track as he's just currently coming out of turn 2 to begin his Q3 session.
Yeah, it looks like a nice shiny pair of tyres strapped onto his Mercedes. We'll see if this is indeed a fresh run from Leonard Gertz. He's the only driver to have exited the pit lane at this point in the session. I'll get the lap data and the detail on for everyone. You can see everyone has got the soft tyres equipped. I wish it would actually tell you on the left hand side if this is a used set or it is indeed a new set of the tyres. I mean, you can gauge it visually, and this does look like a shiny set of tyres, but yeah, I mean, I'm not too sure. I think Leonard Gertz, given that he did actually top Q1, I know he did one run, he should have an extra set of tyres that he wants to use. And I realise I've not gone back into the race scene. Apologies about that, everyone. I'm dusting off the rust a little bit here, you know. I've not streamed for quite a while, but finally my uni Wi-Fi has decided to actually work. But you can see Leonard Gertz is the lone runner out on circuit.
Yeah, as he's currently coming through into the end of the start of that third sector. Leonard obviously first in the first qualifying sessions, fourth, I believe it was in Q2. So Leonard done some really good qualifying run, so hopefully he can try and mimic that, maybe get a pole, maybe get a P3 or 4 in the qualifying. Well, he's invalidated on his out lap, which doesn't really matter as he comes now into the final corner to begin his first lap of Q3, his first lap of the final qualifying session. As he heads in towards turn 1, the DRS open shuts as he heads into turn 1 down to 4th. Very nice on the pay, got to be very careful on the exit. Oh, very close to invalidating there on the exit of turn 2, but he now comes through up in towards turns 4, 5. You can see hopping the curb a lot there, having a settle with very high ride height as he now comes down to the end of this first sector. Let's see what he can do in that first sector of 26.605. Very nice there, in towards turn 7 out and in towards Stamford Den at turn 8. He's got to try and hook this up perfectly, which he does. You can see this is one track you've got to be careful you don't lock up, because you lock up you're going to end up in the wall, or you're going to end up completely missing the apex, which he does so far very, very perfectly. Now into the sling section, very nice so far from then. You can see pushing the boundaries a lot against these walls as he now comes through in towards the hairpin at turn 13. Very close to that wall there, very, very close. Bit close to comfort if you ask me. And he now comes out at turn 13 and now to the end of this middle sector. What does Leonard Gertz do? It will be a 3.071. Very nice. Could be looking for a possible 0.1 or 0.2.
Yeah, Leonard Gertz has a very nice time indeed from him so far, and I think that all but confirms that he is on a fresh set of the tyres. I'll tell you one thing, it is so satisfying around circuits like this to watch the real peak performance of these guys as sliding his way through the final sector. Leonard Gertz is coming through the final sector, and I think he timed his lap perfectly because you can see all 9 other drivers exited the pit lane. If he caught them up in sector 2, that would have been a real bother for him. But 1 minute 35.189 to open up this session. Very nice indeed from Leonard Gertz. We'll see how everyone else gets along here. I believe the first one to start their next lap will be Ben Shabakwanya. We've seen him come out quite early in all these sessions. He wasn't the first one this time, but I think Leonard Gertz just wanted a little bit of running all to himself, get that banker in, as got yellow flags in sector 3. Don't worry about those, that's just drivers backing off on their outlaps and getting some space between themselves and the car in front so as to not catch the dirty air, which of course we know is amplified on this game. Is now opening up the DRS for Ben Shabakwanya. He gets his way down through the Raffles Boulevard. We'll see what sector time he can do. 1 minute 26.539. He's purple in sector 1.
Yeah, it's a tenth quicker than what Leonard Gertz could do. So now you can see that when you compare Q1 and Q2 and Q3, the times absolutely crumble down in this the final qualifying session. I believe it was a 35.6 I believe at Q1, and now Q3, the first run of the first driver, 6 tenths quicker nearly with a 35.189. But Ben Shabakwanya looking very quick as well, currently coming through in towards turn 13, completely misses the apex. We saw him do it last time in Q2, so that's one corner that Bence doesn't seem to like very much, as heads down to the end of this section, a 103.2 split, so that's 2 tenths down on what Leonard did, so could be looking for a 0.3, possibly a low 0.4, depending on what he can do in this final sector, as he's now currently coming through in towards turn 16 very shortly at the bridge section. He's got to time this perfect lane, get it in very nice. You've got to turn in at the perfect point. You turn in too early, you're going to hit the wall. You turn in too late, you're going to miss the apex completely. And so far, Ben's doing it very nicely, having a bit of a hop on the curb there. Doesn't compromise him too much up to the line. Let's see what time Ben Sabakonya can do. He'll be a 35. He'll be a 35.467.
Yeah, so it's not as quick as Leonard Gertz. So far, we've got Alvaro Caraton coming to the line. 1 minute 35.776. Not very nice from him so far. We're right on board with Thomas Ronha. He's going to be the last man to come across the line as more laps begin to come out. 1 minute 36.1 for Shanaka Clay. Luke Smith so far the closest man to Leonard Gertz with a 1 minute 35.356. We've got Ferrari of Corningolo coming through the final sector now. One of the Veloce Elite representatives. That's for Otis Lawrence coming ahead of Leonard Gertz. Where can Thomas Ronha find himself? It is the first 1 minute 34 so far this session. 1 minute 34.976 from the Dutchman. He leads the way in Q3 with just 5.5 minutes left to go. Otis Lawrence, he sniffed provisional pole position for just a few seconds there, and then Thomas Ronha came to snatch it off of him. Very nice time indeed from him. Leonard Gertz, though, still pretty strong showing from him. 1 minute 35.189. He's a good tenth and a half clear of Luke Smith. So yeah, so far at the moment, VSR looking very happy.
They are very nice, and I believe that both the Williams went on used tyres because a 36.1 and a 35.7 on new tyres would not be really what Alvaro and Shanaka are capable of. So we'll be able to see their true pace on their final runs of the session. So we could expect to see them up in that top 4. Top 5, but at the moment the provisional front row is Thomas Ronha, followed by Otis Lawrence Thomas. Very nice lap, first to get into the 0.9s, into the 34s. So, yet again, Thomas showing his dominance here, and could be looking to, hopefully, for him, top this session. Obviously, his teammate down in 14th. Thomas needs to get a good Q3 run and hopefully get himself possibly a podium in this race.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Thomas Ronha, we know how strong he is in qualifying, but I don't think he's out of the woods yet, given how scrappy everyone else's laps looked. I mean, Leonard Gertz, 1 minute 35.189. That's not too far off what Thomas Ronha did, but when we were riding on board with the German driver, I mean, he was all over the place, especially in the final sector. He definitely did scrub off a 10th or so, and as you mentioned, the Williams drivers likely on a scrub set of the tyres. We still do have a very exciting end in store for Q3 with just under 4 minutes left to go. Now Thomas Ronha peeling into the pit lane. He'll be the last one to return to the box, but now it's a complete ghost town out on a circuit. And Nathan, I'm going to quote Chris Buxton here. We've got, we're in the period of waiting before the Banzai stage.
Yep, the classic Banzai stage, and I believe it's going to begin for Leonard Gertz. You can see the Mercedes mechanic there letting him out of the pit box, and Leonard yet again the first to leave the pit lane for the final qualifying runs. So currently P3 had a very nice qualifying performance so far, so the top 3 wouldn't be too bad for him at all, would it, in this session for VSR? Considering they're down, I believe, in 7th, the top 3 would be very nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Leonard Gertz, I mean, I haven't really expected this showing from him. Maybe he just loves this circuit, but I remember him in Canada, just to get out of Q1, he used all 3 sets of his tyres, and he had to use used compound tyres throughout the entirety of the last sessions. So he's not really been the most prolific qualifier so far in the PSGL E series, but he really is he really is impressing this evening. I think Leonard is another driver that has been a part of the PC platform long before the insurgence of runners onto the PC. Himself and Ben Sabakonya have been here for quite some time in the league racing scene, racing in AOR back in the day. I believe now they're in the PSGL E series and they're mixing it in with all the console guys. So far it is a console 1-2 at the minute. Xbox really seeming to be the talent factory at the minute. Thomas Ronha, of course, he's been a part of the PC scene for over a year, I think, at this point. Otis Lawrence only recently coming onto the PC platform, but it's just crazy how these guys have been able to adapt so well onto a new platform, because you might not think it, but when you actually do play, I played on PlayStation before, then I moved over to PC, and it does feel like a different game.
Yeah, and Otis, I think, the transition he's had from Xbox to PC has been absolutely phenomenal, and from what I've seen before, probably one of the best transitions from Xbox to PC, because there is a difference from what I've heard, I've never played the game on Xbox. From what I've heard, the Xbox seems to have a little bit more grip. So going from more grip to less grip will definitely cause issues. But Otis has adapted perfectly. But Leonard Gertzer, he's currently starting his final qualifying run as he comes into towards the exit of turn 3.
Yeah, I think he's timed this one once again very nicely indeed, because he's not really got anyone to give him bother in traffic at the closest car to him on circuit. It's Thomas Ronhaar, and he's just coming down, I believe that's St Andrews Road, headed in towards the Singapore Sling. So yeah, no issues for him. But Leonard Gertzer in the first sector split so far, he's green at the minute. He's up by almost a tenth of a second. It's 87 thousandths of an improvement if you want to go into the milliseconds, but we'll see what he can do as now in towards the second sector. It's not too technical through here, but once he approaches turn number 10, the Singapore Sling, very tricky indeed. It's a fast left, keep his foot pitched in there and then sling it back over to the right, and now in towards the Addison Bridge, where a lot of drivers have faced a lot of grip issues through here. Can he hit his apex on the inside? He misses it ever so slightly, but he does have a nice wide run in towards this DRS straight, which in speeds makes us up to I believe that's 176 miles per hour at the braking zone. He's up by a tenth and a half, going off circuit by quite a long margin actually, out of the exit of turn number 30. I'm not too sure if that's a legal lap, and there he is, oh dear, spinning in the final sector. That's not a legal lap at all, and unfortunately Leonard Gertzer qualifying is going to be brought to a screeching halt. He's not going to be able to complete this lap. We got one of the Williams up next in the second sector, Shanaka Clay, as the clock strikes 0. No new laps can be started. Clay is almost improving by half a second through here. He keeps it nicely on circuit, unlike Leonard Gertzer did. That was a little bit naughty from the VSR representative, but in towards now the final sector for Shanaka Clay, where the walls really are tight to the circuit, underneath the bridge section and in towards the last few corners. Shanaka Clay, where can he place his Williams? Currently on a 1 minute 36.157. It's not a competitive lap time at all from the Williams driver, but now through the final two corners, where can he place himself? Can he go onto the front row of the grid? It is row 2 for the time being. He jumps ahead of Leonard Gertzer. Up next to the line is Timon Shooter, and he is managed to find himself in P5 as teammate. Unfortunately, Otis Lawrence has invalidated on his lap. One of the Parnell boys coming up towards the line next. That is Jabo Konyi into P4. He's on the second row of the grid. Thomas Ronhaar is improving on his previous best lap, and he is now entering the final sector, currently on a 1 minute 34.976. He's so competitive in his Haas. Up next will be Alvaro Carrot onto the line. We'll ride on board with the Williams runner as he comes through the final corner now. Can he go into the front row? Indeed he can, but he can't quite crack the 1 minute 34s at the moment. Gordon N'Golo comes across the line for P7. It's Van Pookie to the line. Goes quickest of them all, but Thomas Ronhaar now through the final corner. Can he dethrone his Van Pookie? Indeed he can. A 1 minute 34.834 from the Dutchman, and he goes on top. He's on pole position alongside Is Van Pookie. Very nice indeed from him.
Yeah, stunner of a lap from his Van Pookie. I didn't watch it, but I saw him come across the line, and the sector times as well was really nice. 34.937. Two drivers only to get into 34, this whole qualifying, and that is Ronhaar and Pookie. So obviously, Parnell is second in the championship so far, so they got their drivers starting second and 6th. Williams leading the championship by nearly 100 points there, starting 3rd and 5th. And then I believe Haas are already also in that mix as well, and they've got Ronhaar on pole. So very nice performance from the top. So, and Williams, 3rd and 5th, they can deal with that, can't they?
Oh yeah, definitely. The Williams boys, you know, I think being close together is definitely key, especially around a circuit like Singapore, where you really can work together. As now we can see the Q3 classification. It is Thomas Ronhaar just over a tenth clear of anyone else. It's Van Pookie in at P2, a man still in form at the minute. The Hungarian really showing his worth for Parnell. Alvaro Carreton in P3 alongside Otis Lawrence on the grid. He invalidated on his lap time, and he still remained on the second row. Shanaka Clay in P5, just 1,000th quicker than bench Jabo Konyi by the end of it all. Leonard Gertzer, further 5,000ths off the back of the pair of them in P7 alongside Gordon N'Golo for FVR. And then rounding out the top 10, invalidating on his lap time, was Luke Smith in 9th, and then it is 10th position and rounding out that top 10 for Timon Shooter. But Nathan, that brings us to the end of qualifying. Thomas Ronhaar, I think, a surprise to not many people on pole position.
Yeah, definitely not a surprise at all. Thomas, you know, we've always done him for his qualifying pace, but his race pace isn't always as quick as his qualifying pace. So possibly we could see Maybe Alvaro get a bit of an advantage. Maybe Pookie as well, because we know Alvaro in the race pace is really, really nice, and it looks like it's dry so far. But it could turn wet. So we'll have to hope. Actually, I hope it doesn't turn wet, because I think that makes it even less interesting. Because you've got no DRS to help you, and the gaps will just grow and grow and grow. Because trying to get through around a wet Singapore, trying to get through on people, even if you're quick act, it's near enough impossible, because it's so easy to defend against drivers around here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll bring you back over to the race scene now, and you can see it's dry at the minute. However, it does look a little bit hazy in the sky. I think there is some cloud coverage. It is pretty difficult to tell in at the night time. You can see all the mechanics, they're primed and ready in the pit lane. They're all just standing in the middle of their pit boxes there. I'm not too sure if you can see that on your screen, Nathan, but we're about to head into the race. Quickly, before we get into this one, who's your top three?
I'm going to say Ron Alvaro, Otis.
Okay, we'll see what these guys can do then. 31 laps around the Singapore Grand Prix. It's going to be a race of attrition for these drivers tonight. Let us know, everyone, in the live chat who you are rooting for in this one and who you think is going to be taking the win. But here we are now getting ready for this race to get underway. Here we are now. It's Van Pook on the right of your picture. Thomas Ronhart on the left. 5 red lights here in Singapore. And we are underway, and it is a good start for Thomas Ronhart, headed down in towards turn number 1. Can it's Van Pookie challenging, but it is actually going to be Alvaro Carreton looking to the outside of Parnell representatives. They file their way in towards turn number 2 and 3. Otis Lawrence trying to get his nose in there and overtake Alvaro Carreton is now, look at them, further back behind, 2 rows deep, about 5 rows of a difference there, is now in towards the Rafaels Boulevard for the first time in this race. Luke Smith and Gordon N'Golo going side by side through here. Luke Smith on the inside, but he'll have the outside line in towards turn number 7, is now up the outside. He goes. Can he stay ahead of Gordon N'Golo? They're going to bang wheels off the exit through here, but in towards Stamford. Luke Smith going to just about stay ahead. Max Wiesel now sneaking his nose in, but at the end of the first sector and in towards sector 2, Thomas Ronhart leading the way from his Van Pookie. Alvaro Carreton in P3. They've all stayed intact at the top of the order.
Yep, and the only person to start on a different tyre is Rimpadrenio, who's on the mediums. Everyone else is on the hard compounded tyres. Great start from Thomas Ronhart then into turn 1. Also a good start from Pookie, but Carreton was right behind him into turn 2. And who's that someone? And that shows Nordyke round at turn 12. A bit of damage as well on his front wing. So going from bad to worse, isn't it, for RHG? Only having one driver running, then that one driver has to have a qualifying ban, and that one driver also spins out. And that's also Dylan Warren and Ruben Pedreño fighting. And that's Dylan Warren through on Pedreño down at turn 14. Well, Pedreño should really be trying to get a few positions more than he has on these mediums, because obviously he's done this strategy so he can get ahead of a few of the drivers on this alternate strategy. And at the moment, we've only had one lap, but it's not worked heavily because Dylan's been able to kind of put him off, and Ronhart 42.7 for his first lap of the session, and that is... Oh, wait, that's Colton N'Golo around down at the final corner.
Oh dear, something's gone wrong for the FBR representative qualifying inside the top 10. It's going to be a big hurt to their race. Now they're running 16th and 18th. FBR not having a good showing this evening. There might have been some contact with Leroy Brown. I think he lost a few positions in that. I'm not too sure what's gone on there, but at the end of the first lap and in towards lap number 2, Thomas Ronhart was able to stretch a second gap to his Van Pookie. However, he did lose it at the end of the first sector. Rimpadrenio, as you mentioned, he should be getting by on Dylan Warren, but just following in the train when it's so hard to overtake around this circuit. He can't use the medium tyres to their full effect, and he's having to sit behind the Red Bull representative. He's made a position up, given that Gordon N'Golo had his spin. But of course it is not going to really work out for him. Maybe he's anticipating that the rain will come ever so slightly earlier than expected, and then of course he'll be able to come in at the same time as all the hard runners. But for the time being, it doesn't look like Rimpadrenio is in the strongest position. Not too many battles going on at the minute. However, DRS next time by will be enabled. Joost Noordijk, he's come back into the pit lane, and I believe he's got a fresh front wing on his Alfa Romeo. It's not been a good day for RHG, only having one runner in this session, and now their lone survivor in this race, unfortunately out of any strong position to fight for points. He's down in 19th place.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest issues as well for Pedreño is behind Dylan Warren, and we know that Dylan Warren's one of the really good drivers when it comes to defence, a bit like a Sergio Perez. So being stuck behind Dylan is not ideal because he knows how to defend. He also knows how to attack perfectly fine as well. So he's behind a very quick driver, which isn't what he wants. And you can see that the mediums are just not working to his advantage because you just can't get past. It's so difficult to try and get through someone here. The only real opportunities are possibly down into turn 14 and maybe down to turn 6 where Thomas is now. But with the DRS train, you're not really going to get much of an advantage with it. You're just going to be pulled along with the train as well. So, it's going to be a lot of pushing needed for Ruben if he wants to try and get through.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just seen confirmation in the live chat about what happened with Corden N'Golo. He had a screen freeze, unfortunately, and that was what caused him to spin out. Really unfortunate considering how strong he has been, especially in qualifying. And a track that is very hard to overtake. You'd have thought he'd be fighting along in that top 10 for the majority of this race, but unfortunately, issues have unfortunately really been uncircumstantial for him. But he's got to move on. He's still in 18th position. You get points for every place in the PSGL E-Series as something's happened here, Nathan.
Yeah, it was Codorn. Big slide out of turn 12. I was going to say, he's got himself, and he's had I can see the screen freeze is happening on his screen. He kind of sits still for a second, then jolts forward. But yeah, he was nearly in that 1 second gap a second ago before he had that issue down at turn 13. So he's got the pace. He's just not having the luck when it comes to his PC.
Yeah, absolutely, and hopefully no other drivers are going to be experiencing that. I know in the past, if one of the spectators were to leave the session, it would cause screen freezes for all of the drivers, and I've enabled the telemetry for all of the engineers watching as Time and Shooters run very wide out the final corner. He's coming under pressure from Matthijs van Erven. These two have a history of being in the same esports organisations. I believe they were both in VSR at the same time, then they both moved on to CRG, and of course now the pair of them have had F1 esports experience, and I know these guys, they can be quite close, certainly on pace, and just as a friendship as in towards the Raffles Boulevard. Being in this DRS train, it is so difficult to actually use the DRS to its full extent. Of course, in the DRS train, when everyone's using it, the effect of it is essentially nullified, so the only person really benefiting from the luxury of it at the moment is going to be Isfan Pookie, and indeed actually Bence Jabo-Konya, given that Shanaka Clay, we've noticed, Nathan, that he is losing that 1 second window that he needs for DRS on Otis Lawrence.
It's not good for Shanaka at all because then it puts him under pressure from all the people behind him. Then we effectively have two trains, and actually Jabo-Konya himself is in the outside that 1 second as well. So the gaps are starting to grow, and that's what we normally see after the first few laps. The first 3-4 laps, that's when we start to see the gaps grow to people's pace. And I think the first stint is normally where we see less racing because everyone's in a train, but once we have pit stops where everyone's undercutting, overcutting, that's where we really see the true advantages and disadvantages when it comes to race pace, warming up the tyres, having the right strategy. So, we'll see the main battling coming out of this first stint, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. When these medium tyres start to die down and the drivers start thinking of a pit stop, they want to be ahead of their rivals coming into the garage. Certainly one guy who could be putting up a fight is Otis Lawrence. Just a few corners ago, he was right on the gearbox of Alvaro Carreton. I'm going to have a look at their battery situation for the top 5. Thomas Ronho with 87%. Isfan Pookie's had to burn the battery a little bit to keep up with the Dutchman. He's on 60% in his Alpha Tauri. The Williams of Alvaro Carreton was 70%. Then Otis Lawrence 84 in his McLaren. The Veloce Elite representative going to have a whale of a time with resource management. Someone who's really had to burn the battery though, Nathan, is Shanaka. 35% in his Williams. I think he's just had to push like crazy to actually keep up with the top 4, but it seems like he is struggling around here.
Yeah, and it's either he's just not got no pace, or he could be running a different setup. What I'm going to do is when he comes out of turn 13, I'm going to watch his speed down the straight to see if there's any type of wing change compared to him and Otis. Otis is now just got the DRS coming out of turn 13, and I think Shanaka is near enough similar speed when it comes to a straight line, so it could be something to do with his pace in the corners. But you can see nearly 1 second out, but Jabo-Konya is now 1 second out of Shanaka. So we've effectively got two trains starting to form, first to fifth, and then sixth down to 18th. So, realistically, we want to get Jabo-Konya back into that 1 second, because if Shanaka drops to 1 second, then that puts Jabo-Konya under even more disadvantage because he's going to have to try and get through on Shanaka, and then he'll lose even more time. So he's got a bit of a compromising situation ahead of him.
Yeah, and Jabberconni's only got 20% in the battery. It is going to be difficult for him to catch up to Shanaka. He desperately wants to be within that 1 second window of DRS. He's just about got it, but I don't think he's going to have it down this straight in towards the Raffles Boulevard, and indeed he does not. So he's going to be losing time to Shanaka in front, but he's also going to be losing time to Leonard Goethe in behind, a man who we saw some strong pace at the beginning of qualifying. He unfortunately let it get away from him by invalidating and spinning on his final run in Q3, but we know he is quick around this circuit, and we could actually see our first real battle in this race for P6, because Leonard Goethe, he knows, Nathan, that he needs to get by on Ben Jabberconny so we can keep up with the leaders in this one, because if they slip up along the road and in towards the second stint, where they're going to be saving tyres, especially at the end of this hard stint, it's going to be so difficult. Once they're on the set of the mediums, they're all pushing like crazy to actually keep up. So Leonard Goethe, he needs to get this move done.
Yeah, he does, really quickly. The gap between Benson and Shanaka is what, 1.3 seconds, so he's got 3/10 of the DRS train. So if Leonard can try and get through then into turn 1, not put much of a battle up, get through, then he can try and then gain back onto Shanaka. So if he times it perfectly and he goes through it right, he can still get ahead of Benson, still try and get back into that DRS train, because look at Shanaka, actually, he's out of it, barely. Has he got DRS? I'm not sure if he has, down towards turn 1. He's not. So not very good for Shanaka. Obviously, no DRS for Ben Jabberconny, and then Leonard getting with about 2/10 as they headed in towards turn 1, but still not close enough to get through. And this is, a prime example of, even though you're quicker, doesn't mean you're going to get through. And Timon says in the chat, the rain is in around 22 minutes.
Okay, sorry. And
I don't really know when that is. That's about what, lap 20, is it? Something like that? Lap 18, lap 19 maybe?
Yes, I think tyre management is going to be very crucial in this race, given that, going 20 laps on the hards, I think that is typically around about their expected tyre life around here. I think sort of on this game, these drivers like to split it in terms of the medium and hard splints, about 55% of the race on the hard, and then the last 45 on the mediums. And of course on the intermediates, that strategy is going to be completely thrown out the window, and I think they're going to have to run a little bit longer than they would have liked to in this race on the set of the hard. So saving tyres is going to be very important in this one. Maybe that's why we're not seeing too many battles at the minute, because you can't win the race on lap number 7. You've got to go right towards the end. Once the intermediate stint hits, of course, then it is going to be all about getting ahead of your rivals early, because it is very difficult to overtake in the dry around here. Without the effects of DRS, it is going to be even more difficult, especially given how there's 3 DRS zones around this circuit. Even though they're not very long straights, still that advantage can assist you making a move in towards turn number 1, especially down in towards turn number 7, as Leonard Goethe, once again, he's on the back of Jabberconny, but headed down in towards turn number 1. He just doesn't seem to be close enough to make this move stick, and Jabberconny, he's slipping away from Shanaka Clay. Now it's 1.7 seconds, the gap between the pair of them. Leonard Goethe is going to have the bit between his teeth, and I think he'll be slightly annoyed sitting in behind at this Alpha Tauri, but headed down the straight in towards turn number 7. He's on the battery, he's in the slipstream, in the wheel tracks of Jabberconny, who defends to the inside line. Leonard Goethe has to go the long way around through here at the Memorial Corner, turn number 7 in towards Stamford. They're going to run side by side, but Leonard Goethe this time by has the inside line, and he gets the move on Jabberconny. He did put up a stoic defense, but it wasn't enough to hold off Leonard Goethe. He gets on by, but he's sacrificed even more time. 2.1 seconds is now the gap between himself and Shanaka Clay. So Nathan, at this point in the race, the top 5 going to run away with it.
Yeah, it seems that way. But Leonard, he had good qualifying pace, so if he can convert his qualifying pace into race pace, we haven't actually been able to see what he can do yet because of him being stuck behind Benz. He needs to, we could see him gain back a little bit closer. Not sure if he'll get into the 1 second gap for. Do you think actually we'll try and see if it does go to winters, because it rains doesn't mean it will go into weather. So, it's going to be a big decision from the drivers whether they go for the normal strat and hope for the best, or if they stay out and hope it goes fully raining and they have to switch to the inters or the wets.
Yeah, Absolutely, actually, you're absolutely right about that one. I mean, this could just be a light rain that we see at the end
Mm.
of this hard stint, and then all of a sudden the intermediate tyres, when they have to come into the pit lane, the track's not ready for them, and all of
No.
a sudden, you know, if you pit for the medium tyres, you're going to be in the better position by the end of it. Maybe that's why Pedreño's gone for the medium tyres to utilise that pace early on, but as we can see, by him being in 15th position, it has not worked out whatsoever. He's got the widest Red Bull in the world, I think, in front of him, of Dylan Warren, the Tier 10 representative, sitting in 14th. Pedreño tried to get by early on in this race, utilising the medium tyres to full effect, but on lap number 9 of 31, I think this is around about the crossover point. I think the pace between the hards and the mediums is going to be about the same. Pedreño's tyres certainly going to be falling off in the next few laps. So his strategy really, Nathan, just hasn't worked out.
No, not at all. And he's actually close to losing the 1 second. He gets to about 8.5 tenths at some point. So, yeah, it was a bold strategy. It could have worked, but it's just around here, it's just not possible. And when you have Dylan Warren in front, that puts you at more of a disadvantage because Dylan's, you know, like I said before, really good at defending. And it's a street track as well. You know, all these elements come into play, and it's like just everything's a barrier to you. You can't do anything about it. So you've got to change it up. Just try something different, see if it works. But obviously, for Ruben, it hasn't. He's outside the 1 second now to Dylan. So this could also put him under a bit of pressure from Thomas Lamanen. And also, that's Benz Abercrombie not having DRS on Leonard Goetzer. So, and that's Ruben Pedreño into the pit lane. He'll be going on to hards, I believe, unless he's going on to mediums. Oh, and he's retired on the session. So that's Ruben's day over. Not worked at all. So he thought, actually, you know what? Let's just retire. So he might end a bit better.
Oh, I think that's silly though, from Ruben Pedreño, given that you get points for every single position, and Race Clutch is in this fight for P2 in the standings, and I think they need his points, you know, because Haas are beginning to stretch an advantage. They were able to get ahead as of last race as of last race, so it's not looking good for the Race Clutch team. And Luke Smith only in P8, contrast that to Haas P1 and P10, and also Veloce I think actually will be able to jump the Race Clutch team, given that they're in 4th and 11th. So yeah, really not a strong showing, as Joost Noordijk becomes the first man to take a time penalty today. 3 seconds added onto his race time. He seems to be quite quick at the minute, but he is 34 seconds off of everyone else. So it is, unless safety car comes out, it is looking very dire for Joost Noordijk in this race. But on lap number 10 of 31, anything still can happen.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, he will get points, so, you know, it's not like he's going to lose that completely. It's not ideal being 35 seconds behind the pack and also having to do another pit stop, but, you know, he's going to get points. That's all he wants, and if anything, he'll be happy that Ruben's retired because it means an extra position, an extra point. But still, Thomas Ronhard lead after 11 laps, followed by Istvan Pukki, Alvaro Caraton, Otis, and Shinaka. So the top 5 has stayed the exact same as it was in qualifying.
Yeah, it seems like there's just not been many moves at all. The biggest mover in this race is Matthijs van Ermen. He's made 3 places in this race, but when you consider that one of them was Corden N'Golo having an incident somewhere along the road, you know, it doesn't really speak too much to you. Max Wiesel, Alexander Kraft and Thomas Lamanen have made up places, but I do believe once again that it's just drivers having incidents ahead of them, and them making up the moves. The man with the most positions lost, it was 9 momentarily, but Corden N'Golo has just got by on Connor Muir, who is really struggling around the streets of Marina Bay in Singapore. He's now down into 17th. Corden N'Golo trying to mount a recovery charge in this race. He's not a million miles off the pack, and I definitely do think he's got the superior pace over his teammate Thomas Lamanen, who has lost that 1 second window to Dylan Warren. I think that is based on the fact that Ruben Pedreño was in between them, and now all of a sudden that Ruben Pedreño's retired, there was a big chasm that's been opened up. So Lamanen, he's got his work cut out for him. He's already lost 3 tenths to his teammate. I think it is going to be wise for them to swap positions down FVR, and definitely that'll be relayed to the drivers by their race engineers. See what happens though. Still a long race left to go. Lap number 11 of 31, and we're yet to see the rain.
Yeah, and that, well, yet to see if it arrives, and if it does, it might be heavy, it might be light. So, at least the fact we know that risk of rain's there, it creates a little bit more suspense. the chat and for the drivers, because they've got to be thinking on the spot of, well, what do we do if it does this? What do we do if it does that? Because it's not as straightforward as just get to the end, pit to mediums, done. It could change completely. So even though Ron Haar's so far the quickest on track, for all we know, we could see a safety car come out, then it start training, and then we could see Max Fiesel come out on top. Anything can happen. That's all. I think it was PSGL. Was it Belgium where we saw Cameron Dowds? And I think it might have been Pookie who started. I think like 18th and 20th, and they did first and second because of safety cars and different pit strategies. So it can all change, and that's more than possible to happen here. It's just got to depend on if drivers make the right decisions. Pookie still putting under pressure onto Thomas, but obviously there'd be no point fighting for a move now because you battle too hard, you're going to lose positions to people behind. And it's a thin track, so battling already is quite limited because if you push someone a little tiny bit, that'll be them in the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a circuit where there really is no margin for error whatsoever. As we're watching the battle for P6 at the minute, Ben Sharakonyi has been able to get back within DRS range of Leonard Goetzer, who really hasn't closed the gap at all to Shinaka Clay in front of him. He's been saving up his ERS. He's got 50% in the battery, contrast to Shinaka's 14% in the back of his Williams. So Leonard Goetzer, he can begin to close. He only needs to make up 1.5 seconds in order to get back up to the DRS range of Shinaka, and I think he'd drag the rest of the train along with him, but he's just withholding that for the time being and chilling in at P6. It's a decent haul of points for VSR, and I definitely do think that they need it. They're right in the thick of things at the minute. They're 7th in the standings, not too far off the back of Team 10. They're only TF10. They're only 5 points actually off the rear of them, and at the moment, given how their race is going so far, they will be jumping TF10. That's the fight for P6 in the standings. So VSR, they do need these points, and Leonard Goetzer, I think he's just playing the safe game. He's keeping it chill, doing his best to secure this really for the team and not take any brash overtaking moves or push too hard and all of a sudden put it in the wall. And that is just sort of what happens when we get to this point in the season, where it does matter so much more now, Nathan, when you make a mistake, given how close things are at this point in the season. After this round, there's only 2 races, so any mistake could cost you a place in the championship.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose that's the thing. It's good in a way because it shows how close the championship is, and it shows how close the drivers are. And we've got community teams and pro teams in the mix, so that makes it even more interesting. Because obviously Parnell and will be wanting to kind of show actually we're quickest community teams. They want to also be quicker than some of these esports teams, and the fact they're ahead of I believe 4 of them because they're second in the championship. That looks good for Parnell as a team, doesn't it? Especially as community team, be quicker than some of the actual esports teams. So it's something they want. But one person we haven't really spoken about much this race, Otis Lawrence. Obviously, I believe now he's a McLaren development driver, isn't he, for the upcoming esports season? Obviously, not yet old enough to take part in actual pro series, but surely he will be able to in the next couple of seasons when he gets to the right age, shouldn't he?
Yeah, he's turning 15, I believe, in May. Then, of course, you have to be 16 to compete in the F1 Esports Series. So, I think, 2024? 2025? No, 2024 is when he is actually going to be able to compete. Whether or not he's actually able to qualify for challenges is what I'm worried about. I know there's been some grey areas in the rules, but I think I'm not going to delve too much into them. But, Otis Lawrence is definitely a driver that we do need to keep our eyes on. We've caught him so young in his development and such an early stage of his esports career, where he's only 14 years old, but he's an esports development driver. And I don't think I've seen anyone as young as Otis Lawrence, fighting at this level. And I think I made this point in another league a week ago or something, but when I was his age, I was playing F1 2017 on 50 AI or something. So probably even less than that. I was on the pad, but just the difference in the caliber of other drivers his age and what level he's at, where he's able to compete with the likes of Karaton and Shinaka, who've got years of F1 esports experience. The future looks bright for him.
Yeah, definitely. And another driver, talking about the younger generation of drivers, we've got Cameron Dowds. I think he turned 13 in December, if I'm 100% sure, which is that's the case. then another driver who's completely come up through the ranks. Obviously, unfortunately, couldn't take part today, but I'm sure he would have definitely been in the mix with this possibly the top 10. He's improved a lot over these last few PSGL seasons, so it's nice that we're seeing a lot of younger drivers getting in. But the issue they have, and Alfie Butcher is another example, they are too young to actually take part, even though they're quick enough. So it puts them at a disadvantage. And the issue is then, just say, this game's obviously working well for Otis, and he's one of the top guys. If the next game doesn't work well for him, he's not really going to have much of a chance to get to esports if he's slower. So it does put the drivers in a bit of compromising position if the game doesn't work well for them. Because for now, Otis, in my opinion, has been on pace of a lot of the esports drivers and should have probably got a seat. Obviously not old enough, but it's a shame that there's an age restriction. Obviously, it's understandable through all the contracts and law stuff, but it's still a big shame for these drivers who deserve to have have these opportunities.
Yeah, you know what? I think I've seen this case with another driver. I believe Dylan Warren, being on F1 2020 is where we saw him burst on the PC scene and was incredibly competitive. Maybe not at the level of Otis Lawrence in contrast to the esports guys, but definitely that was his best game. But I do believe he was like 15 years old, so he's too young to actually qualify for F1 esports, and he definitely would have been fighting in challengers and such. But that's not the case for him. And Dylan Warren, he has seen a resurgence in pace, and I'm very happy to see him back where he is. I think he's another driver I remember commentating on all the way back on F1 2019. We used to race in the same league as each other, and it's good to see how much he's progressed and how he's had a resurgence in pace on the F1 22 game. But you're definitely right about Otis Lawrence. His biggest flaw is just he's too young to compete, and that isn't his fault at all. You can't choose when you're born, but if he peaks now, surely he's not going to be it's going to be a little bit of pressure on him to actually make F1 esports, given how high the expectations are on him.
I suppose in a way as well, it's something for him to brag about, being too young to take part in a pro series. He's got the least experience, but he's quicker than some of the guys that are already there. So it's, I suppose in another way, it's like, well, it's a bit of a compliment for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Otis Lawrence, I really do hope the best for him, and the way he's oh dear,
Clay.
Yeah, that's a 3-second time penalty added to his race time, and that pretty much is going to nullify any chance that he has of taking a podium this race. He's almost got the 3-second window to Leonard Goetze in behind, so really he's going to be looking in his mirrors for the majority of this race. And certainly Leonard Goetze and Ben Shabakoni, they're going to see on the timing screen on the top left of their screen that Shinaka does have a penalty, and I'd imagine the likes of Smith, Vettel and Van Erven, they're going to have that relayed to them by their engineers. But now Shinaka Clay with the time penalty, I think it's all going to be about assisting Alvaro Carreton in this one, and surely that means he might want to put some pressure onto Otis Lawrence, maybe cause him to lose DRS to Carreton in front of him. I don't know, could happen, but we'll have to wait and see. Speaking of ERS, I did have a little bit of a misspeaking there, but Otis Lawrence got almost full battery at this point in the race, as was Carreton. Unfortunately, Van Pookie's only got about 60% in his Alpha Tauri, and Thomas Ronhard's got 100%. of these guys really just withholding the battery at this point. They don't want to fight. And on lap number 17 of 31, typically this is around about the point where drivers start to think about a pit stop, but with rain imminent in the next few laps, I believe it's going to be around about 5 minutes from now when the rain starts to fall. They're going to start to think about the intermediates and whether it is actually going to get wet enough for the tyres to be in full effect.
Because if the rain comes, it'll be pretty soon, within the next 5 or 6 laps. Big start from Ronhard there, but now it's either you wait for the rain, hopefully it makes it so you have to pit onto inters or wets, or you think, right, you know what, we'll go for the traditional strat, we'll pit in, because the pit window will be in about 3 or 4 laps time. You pit onto the mediums, hopefully you go to the end, because if it's just light rain or a little a bit of a drizzle, you can make it on mediums to the edge. You just got to be very careful with the kart. And these guys, they're quick enough. They know how to control the car. So if needs be, they can take the mediums to the end. Some of them might have compromised a little bit of dry setup to make it so if they do need to run on the mediums in a bit of a wetter, condition, that can make it a little bit easier. And also, I've noticed that. Look at Isan Pookie right on the back of Ronhard. Either Ronhard's made a mistake, or Pookie's just absolutely dumping
Ooh.
everything he can to try and get through. We'll see if Pookie tries to take the lead at the end of this lap as he comes out of turn 22 and 23. He's got the DRS. He's going to gain on Ronhart. Is it enough to get him into turn 1? He's going to gain. He's not using DRS, but he's gaining to about a 10th behind, 6th behind. So yeah, he's gaining a lot, but just not enough to make a move.
Yeah, he was on the battery off the exit of turn number 23 there, but he didn't decide to use it down the straight. Maybe just letting Ronhard know he's there, but he's once again on the battery, headed in towards the Raffles Boulevard out of turn number 5. He's now on the battery off the exit through here, and he's closing in the wheel tracks of Thomas Ronhard. Thomas Ronhard's going to defend to the inside line, so Istvan Pukki has to look the long way round, but to the outside line goes Istvan Pukki. He's going to get the move on Thomas Ronhard and is leading the race on lap number 18 of 31. Ronhard did use a bit of battery to defend from him there. He's only got 87% left in the battery, but he certainly could have gone for more of a defense if he wanted to on Pookie. Further back behind, Leroy Brown gets by on Alexander Kraft. That's for P12, and between SRT and VSR, not too many points separating them at the minute, so definitely a fight that is worth mentioning. But at the front of the order is Van Pookie, leading from Thomas Ronhard. Alvaro Caraton remains in P3 despite having Otis Lawrence all over his gearbox, headed down the main straight. And that's a big move.
Also, I noticed, I think Leonard Gertz is on his push because the gap now went from 2.9 on lap 16 to 2.5 to Schumacher on this lap. So now Leonard's like, right, you know, if we can keep the gap around the same after the pit stops, he's got that extra position, puts him into top 5. Leonard would love at the moment a top 5, considering Vescal 7th in the championship. A P5 would be very nice. Obviously, Alexander Kraftain in 13th, not ideal, but it's still some nice points for him to add to the board as well. So Viscal looking currently to get some nice points today. If all goes well, we've still got, 12 laps to go, so anything can change still. But at the moment, it's looking really well for them. And Veloce 4th and 11th, so doing nice for Otis, which time and not where he really should be. He should be a little bit higher than that. But it's still not all over yet. Haas, 2nd and 10th. Parnell, 1st and 7th. They're looking to take second most points home because I think Williams will take a few more 3rd and 5th. I don't know about the points gap. And also that was Timus Laminen fighting with Coney. No goal up, but that's Ron Hart. Go for a send on Pookie. Hits a back of Pookie into turn 8. The rain's here. I can see it. Now,
oh yeah.
Is it the fact if it stays light or will it get into weather? We'll have to see. But Ron Hart went for a massive send and I didn't quite see that one coming. Caught me off guard heavily.
Yeah, I mean, I swapped over to Dylan Warren just as the move was on there, but yeah, Thomas Ronhart, he left it into the pit. Conor Muir, we'll see what tyres he's on. Intermediate tyres this early. The rain has just started falling, and Conor Muir, maybe he's caught it a little bit too early here, but yeah, he's decided to come out on a set of the intermediate tyres. We'll see where his pace is in regards to the rest of the grid. Joost Noordijk also sees no point in staying out on the set of the hard compound of tyres. He's coming to the box for RHG. Running an 18th position, and wow, that's heavy rain already. I mean, DRS being disabled within about 30, maybe to a minute since the rain started falling. DRS already been disabled. We'll see possibly at the end of this lap all the drivers coming into the pit lane, and surely it is going to be a disaster for Shanaka Clay, for Ben Charbonneau, given that they are so close on circuit to their teammate. They're not going to be able to double stack. Istvan Pukki coming into the pits, as does Ronhart, as does Caraton, Otis Lawrence as well. Is Shanaka Clay going to come into the pit lane? Indeed, he will. However, he's going to lose a lot of time due to double stacking.
Yeah, and actually, I think it'll actually be close between Alvaro and Shanaka. I'll go on board with Shanaka now to see what their pit stop's like. But the good thing for Pookie is he got through on Ronhart. That's helped him massively in there. Look at that. Shanaka's going to lose it to, I believe that's Otis and Leonard as well. And Matthias also having a bit of a double stack as well on the back of Ronhart. So a few drivers losing out. Luke Smith up to 6th. Shanaka's now down to 7th. He's got lots of cars behind and he's got that 3-second. Luckily, Shanaka's looking like he's going to struggle for a top 10 at the moment if it all stays how it is at the moment. But look at the track already. It's soaking wet. The rain's absolutely plummeted down. After just, 30-40 seconds of rain, Van Erven goes to the wet tyres.
Wow.
So he must seem like it's going to get wetter than it is now. But if it does, it's going to cause issues for the other drivers. But Istvan getting through and Thomas was needed and it's worked at the moment.
Oh my
Istvan looks like he's going to win.
Yeah, I'm just riding on board with Thomas Ronhaar now in the wheel tracks of Istvan Pukki. The track is soaking wet at the minute, as you mentioned. I mean, this looks like it's enough, not at the moment for the wet tyres to come out, but you know, if it keeps up like this and the rain continues to fall at the rate that it is, once the standing water begins to build up on the circuit, that is the time for the wet tyres. You know, the intermediates can deal with a damp circuit and, you know, the rain clattering down, but once those puddles begin to form, all of a sudden these guys have to think about going on for a set of the wet compound of tyre. Thomas Ronhaar knows this, and he's on the battery headed down the straight. Of course, no DRS now that we're in the wet conditions, and he'll have to try and make a move in challenging conditions on Istvan Pukki if he wants to win this race.
Yep, and Van Erven's try strategy so far has not worked out. He's dropped 1.5 seconds off Warren, and also Thomas Lammen gained on him a little bit. So if it don't get wetter soon, that could be Matthias's, I won't say race over, but in terms of being in that top 15, that will be over, as he's now 3 seconds back on Dylan Warren. But Caraton is on the back of Ronhaar. Otis also looking very quick in the wet tyres, and big slide for Caraton. And look now, Otis is gaining 2.5 tenths. He comes into turn 1, not close enough to make a move. But Otis, you know, we've seen him in PSGL many times in the wet weather. He's amazing in that wet condition. So this could be perfect for Otis, maybe to try and get through an Alvaro, because Alvaro seems a little bit slower compared to the top two. He's 7 tenths back, and Otis is just 2 tenths behind. Leonard Goethe 3 seconds behind Otis, and Shinaka down into 7th. He's looking at the moment to come home P9 or 10. Depending on the gap between him and Tom and Shooter. But Otis 3 tenths behind as they come out of turn 7.
Yep, Otis Lawrence, he's right in the rear of Alvaro Caraton. He is beginning to use his battery to close the gap to the Spaniard in front of him. The Alvaro Caraton, though, he's got 75% in his battery. Contrast that to Otis Lawrence, only got 45% in his McLaren, but he is right on the rear diffuser, headed in towards the Anderson Bridge, and possibly if he gets a good run out of the hairpin, Otis Lawrence could go for the move, and you can see he's right on the rear as we got the helicopter shot, headed through the Anderson Bridge and into the braking zone. They go, Joost Noordijk with another 3-second time penalty in this one. Off the exit of the corner, will Otis Lawrence use the battery and try and make the move down in towards turn number 14? He's certainly on the rear of Caraton, but not close enough to make the move. If he had DRS, he could have been right in striking range of going for that move, and I think he's just going to be hoping that Caraton begins to struggle in the wheel tracks of Thomas Ronhaar, loses that slipstream, and potentially he could go for that move. That's the fight for the podium, so it is definitely important for Veloce that they take this one ahead of Alvaro Caraton, especially considering how dominant Williams have been in this season. Taking points off them at every opportunity is going to be vital for these guys.
Yeah, definitely. At the moment, there's the top four. They've kind of got two little battles going. You've got Pukki and Ronhaar fighting for P1, and then you've got Alvaro and Otis fighting for P3, because Alvaro's just losing lots of 8 tenths now between him and Ronhaar. So Alvaro's losing lots of time, and that could have been in with the setup, not going for a bit of, not going for the ideal wet setup. And Ronhaar's still gaining on Pukki, but not enough to get through. And it's a perfect showing of, you just can't get through on people around here. Even though Ronhaar's quicker than Pukki and Otis is quicker than Alvaro, for all we know, they might never get through when we've still got 10 laps to go. So it causes lots of issues for these drivers, even though they know they're quicker. And Otis, 10th.5 behind Alvaro into the braking zone at turn 7. And actually, he's going to go for the inside. No, he's not. I thought he was going to go for it then into turn 8. That was... Oh, but Alvaro's gone wide. He's hit the wall, I think, on the exit. Ooh. Bit of wheel banging between the two. Otis going to try and go for the inside into turn 11. He's got the ERS open. He's going to push, but Alvaro pulls away. So for now, Otis still down in 4th, but he's right on the back of this Williams, and Alvaro's completely on skates at the moment.
Yeah, and I think this is where frustration is going to begin to build up as Thomas Ronhaar has a look up the inside in towards the hairpin at turn number 13. A little bit of contact between himself and Istvan Pukki, but he's going for the move, headed down in towards turn number 14. Pukki defending to the inside line. Ronhaar tried to find a way on the outside, possibly switchback territory for him. He gets a better run off the exit of the corner, headed now down into the 3rd sector, almost going for the move at the fast left-hander, and now into the chicane. Istvan Pukki running very deep through here. Thomas Ronhaar all over the back of the Parnell representative underneath the bridge section. Now we'll see what they can do, and this has allowed for Caraton to catch back up, which will be even more to the annoyance of Otis Lawrence, because he lost a lot of time defending at the earlier points in this lap, as Alexander Kraft gets a 3-second time penalty for track extension. It's going to be harder now than ever to keep it on the circuit, so penalties might begin to become a lot more frequent in the dying laps of this race. But on towards lap number 23 is Van Pookie, still leading from Thomas Ronhaar. Caraton feeling the pressure from Otis Lawrence in behind. Have a look at the ERS situations. Pretty much everyone in around about the same territory aside from Caraton. He's got 65% in the back of his Williams to utilise down the straight to defend from Otis Lawrence. But off the exit of turn number 5, headed down in towards the Raffles Boulevard, will Thomas Ronhaar try and go for the move on his Van Pookie? It doesn't look like it. What about Otis Lawrence? Can he try and close the gap to the Williams in the braking zone? I mean, it's just so difficult to overtake around here, and Otis Lawrence, he has to stay behind for at least another lap. And look at the gaps between these guys, almost the top 4 separated by about a second.
Yeah, and Max Wiesel's got a 3-second time penalty, meaning now the gap between Schumacher and Benz is 5 seconds. So currently Schumacher's safe for the 7th position. Max Wiesel will lose out to Benz and he will drop down to 9th if it stays the same, and Otis yet again still on the back of Alvaro, but just not close enough at all into any of these braking zones. And you know, you get to this point now where people are going to get frustrated. You're going to see people pushing really hard, and that's when you see possible incidents, because people just don't know where to around the node. They just want to get through.
Otis Lawrence, sorry to cut in there. He came close to getting the move on Alvaro Caraton, but once again, Nathan, it's just no room at the end for him to go through. He's close to the back in the 3rd sector, but he just can't get on by.
No, and it's a big frustration for any driver not being able to get through, even though you know you're a lot quicker. At the moment, Otis has got possibly leading pace, and he can't really benefit of it because he's got to just stick behind the Williams until he can try and find an opening. At the moment, the only way he's going to get through is if Alvaro makes a big mistake, which at the moment Alvaro's made little minor mistakes under throttle, under braking, but it's nothing really that's giving that much of a disadvantage to Otis. And Leonard Gertz are also now gaining in. The gap was what, 2.5 seconds between him and Otis. It's now 6/10. So this is where Luke Smith's also gaining back in. So now everyone's coming back into this train together again. And it won't be too long before we see Schumacher Clay also start to close in.
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, the top 4 have been fighting so hard for the last few laps, and trying to go for these moves, that it's allowed for the likes of Gertzer and Smith to close back the gap to the drivers in front. And now we could see a potential 6-car fight for the lead. But I say fight, we might not even see any overtakes. It could still end this way, despite the best efforts of Ron Hart and Otis Lawrence to get by on their rivals. And I think it is pretty clear that they are the quickest 2 drivers in this train. It's Van Pookie and Caraton. They're just driving as wide as possible. And Caraton especially, he's got 65% in the battery. He's certainly not pushing to defend from Otis Lawrence. He just knows that following in behind Thomas Ronhart is going to make it so difficult for Otis Lawrence to actually go for any sort of move. And as soon as he feels threatened by the McLaren in behind, he could just use his battery and defend at that position. And Otis Lawrence at the minute, 24% of ERS charge, is not much at all to attack with. So frustration certainly is going to build up, and this is when we could see some mistakes come out for these guys. And I wouldn't be surprised if potentially in that top 6 we see a 3-second time penalty come out. And if it was Thomas Ronhart or Van Pookie, they could be dropping off the podium, potentially out the top 5.
It's possible, indeed it is. But I'm looking at the bottom because we've got a battle for 15th between Matthias, Connor and Kodun in Golo. They got very close at the end of sector 1. Obviously Matthias' tyres are absolutely nowhere near optimal. He's after what, 6 laps, he's dropped 18 seconds to Dylan Warren, who he came at a second behind. And Connor and Kodun are trying their best to get through, but even though Matthias is on way worse hose, he can defend really well. And that's the thing around this track, it's near enough impossible for anyone to get a move. And Otis Lawrence right in the back of Alvaro to turn 4, and is he going to be close enough to get a move into turn 7? He's got this chance, he's gaining. Is he going to get him in? The gap's about a 10th. And yet again, not close enough. Even though he's right in the gearbox into turn 4, turn 5, he just can't get through. And the same for Ronhar in towards turn 8 now, trying to get through on his Van Pookie.
Yeah, I mean, Otis Lawrence is just, he can't find this move, and Alvaro Caraton was able to use his battery ever so slightly to just get that little bit of a buffer zone and defend from Otis Lawrence without having to sacrifice too much time himself. Otis Lawrence, he'll be very frustrated in his cockpit, but he just needs to keep his head level. Maybe for the next few laps, just sit in behind, try and save up some of the battery to catch up at least in ERS percentage to Alvaro Carreton, especially with Leonard Goetze in behind, risking a potential top 3 by fighting this much and inviting the likes of Leonard Goetze and Luke Smith into the train. And Chinaka Clay, as you have mentioned, has now caught up, so it's a 7-car train for the lead of the Grand Prix. There's a big gap to Max Wiesel in behind. I don't think that he'll have really any impact in the end of this race. So the top 7, if something kicks off, any one of these guys can win this race, and who knows what can happen in the PSGL E-Series. There's definitely no stranger to some controversy throughout this season, so you know, who knows what can happen on lap number 25, headed on towards lap number 26. It's Van Poelke still leading the way from Thomas Ronhaar. The pair of them equal on ERS. Carreton has got a lot more battery percentage though than Otis Lawrence in behind. That is inhibiting the Welshman's chance of an overtake.
Yep, and we've got 5 laps remaining, so now this is where the drivers, probably I'd say lap 28, 29, that's where they're going to be pushing heavily. They're pushing now, but you know, time's of the essence now, and it's become to that point where they need to get through. If Otis wants to get through, he's got to do it. So give it a couple more laps time. He'll be pushing, he'll be pushing even harder, trying to squeeze up where he can on the back of Alvaro, because at the moment he wants to get that third. He wants to probably even get a second if he can do, because Ronhaar and Poelke are fighting really hard as well. If he can get through an Alvaro, he can close up on the top 2. But, you know, it is like 2 little battles. You got first and second and third and fourth, because Alvaro's not on the pace of Ronhaar, but Poelke's not on the pace. Poelke's not on the pace of Ronhaar either. So it's slowing them down. But because Otis has got Alvaro behind, it's slowing Alvaro down because he's trying to defend. And then you've also got Leonard Goetze and Luke Smith and Chinaka Clay all involved now. So the top 7 was separated by nearly 10 seconds at one point. It's now a lot smaller because everyone in the top 7 is within a second of each other. So at the moment, depending on the incidents we could have ahead, any of these top 7 could possibly take a win here, or at least take a podium.
Yeah, and I think Carreton's just his perfect buffer zone at the minute to Thomas Ronhaar in front of him is 0.8 of a second. If he can keep it within inside that, he'll have the effects of the slipstream headed down these straights, and he's able to defend using his surplus battery that's been able to save up, and that is the power of resource management. And I think I've somehow telepathically spoken to Otis Lawrence here, right? Because I've said he should hold off for a few laps and charge up his battery, and he's done exactly that. Now he's got 40% in the back of his McLaren, and all of a sudden now he's got a potential win condition here to get by on Alvaro Carreton, because Carreton now dropping back from the leaders, and Luke Smith now has a 3-second time penalty. He's extended off the exit of turn number 22 and 23, and that is going to put him out of the fight for a podium in this race. But it's Van Poelke still leading the way on lap number 27 of 31. A bad exit out of the exit of turn number 3 for Otis Lawrence, and in towards 5 they go. Can Otis Lawrence, can he get a good run through here? Can he finally get the move on Alvaro Carreton that he's been hoping for the last, 10 laps in this race? Ever since the pit stop phase ended, he's been right on the rear of Carreton, and he's just not found a way through. And once again, on lap number 27, his laps are running out here. He can't get on by.
And we've got, I believe that is Conor Mewing into the pit lanes onto wets, maybe, or onto a new set of inters, because I've noticed Matthias has gained on the back of Tumas. I don't know if that's because Tumas has made a mistake or if these wets are now quicker. And yep, Conor Mewing onto the wet tyres now. So Matthias is going to start gaining a lot. Gets through onto Tumas Lamnan down at the exit of turn 5, and he's probably going to be able to hold that off yet because Tumas can't fight that at all. So Van Erven up into the top 14 now, and Progenu's only just left the session.
I didn't know so, yeah.
He's been halfway through watching it all unfold. I bet he's annoyed now because he might have been able to. Sorry, did I cut you off there?
Oh no, Otis Lawrence, he's got the switchback. Lawrence on the switchback, he's made the move. Finally, Alvaro Carreton, he ran too deep into the corner. He was defending to the inside line. I mean, that was expected. I mean, he was right on the rear of him down the straight. Carreton, he's just locked up and he's made the mistake. Otis Lawrence finally gets on through and he's into P3. He's going to be unleashed in this race, and he's on the rear now of Thomas Ronhaar. He's about 0.8 of a second off the back, but look at the gap he's already been able to build up to Carreton. 0.8 of a second. Carreton caught napping, and then he made the mistake trying to defend the inside line. Otis Lawrence, a switchback pulled to perfection. He's made the move. He's now into P3's on the podium, closing to the rear of Ronha. And I think maybe, Nathan, at this point now, Ronha sees that Lawrence has made the move. He knows that he is quick in the wet weather conditions, could create a sense of urgency to potentially go for the lead of this race and put a car in between himself and the man that is arguably the quickest on a circuit at the moment. He's on the rear of Istvan Pukki. He's using the battery, headed down in towards turn number 6, but he just doesn't seem to be close enough, headed in towards the braking zone. Wow, we've finally seen an overtake in the wet weather conditions.
Well, we've seen one, and of course it was the time I wasn't looking at the top 3. I've been looking at them the past 8 laps, and the one time I switched away for a second, it swaps. But look at this here.
Oh, wow.
Ronha on the back of Pukki. Otis literally bump drafting Ronha into turn 8 there. So, you know, Otis is on such good pace, and Pukki's just blocking both Thomas and Otis now as they come through into the sling section at turn 11. And I think, you know, obviously Thomas and Otis have raced a lot on the Xbox, on the PC. Thomas knows what Otis's strengths are. And the wet weather is definitely one. And Ronha going around the outside, but a bit of defence there from Pukki, pushing Ronha wide. Ronha's going to have to go for it. And also that's Otis as well. Going to try and capitalise down towards turn 11, but he's not close enough.
No, at this point in the race, I mean, Istvan Pukki, he's really just a mobile chicane for these guys. And now Thomas Ronha off the exit of turn number 14 is going to look to the outside line of Istvan Pukki. He'll have the inside for the next right, and there he goes. Thomas Ronha for the lead of the race. Istvan Pukki has to cut the chicane on the inside line, and he stays ahead of Thomas Ronha. And all of a sudden, Otis Lawrence now trying to sneak his way through. So close to contact. Ronha's in the wall. Thomas Ronha with wing damage. High drama on lap number 28. Thomas Ronha is lost P3 now. Alvaro Carreton onto the podium once again. Istvan Pukki still leading this race. Otis Lawrence in second, but now Thomas Ronha with wing damage. He's going to be a sitting duck to these guys, and you can see off the exit of turn number 22 and 23, Leonard Gertz's easily able to slip on by. Luke Smith as well, trying to find his way in through here. Big drama on the final few laps of this race, and Haas are going to be fuming at that one.
Yeah, and also Luke Smith banging into the side of Ronha there at the exit of turn 3. But this has gone so terribly wrong because you've got Shanaka Clay also now going for Ronha at the inside to turn 4. Ronha will try and defend, locks up completely. There's nothing he can do. The wings just start destroyed. Otis on the back of Istvan Pukki now as they come down in towards turn 7. Bit of a slide from Otis, but corrects it, and he's got to try and get through on this one because now Otis is going from 1 point being stuck in 4th to fighting for 1st. He's going to try and go around the outside at turn 8 at Stamford. Can't get it, so he's going to have to try and fight now into turn 9, and he's all over the back of this Alpha Terrier. He's heading towards turn 9 out, and he just still can't get through. He's going to have to try and get it on the exit here. If he can get the power down, the battery is 62% to Istvan, 44%, well 40% now to Otis, so Istvan's got a bit of an advantage when it comes to battery.
And I saw one thing in the live chat, 2 dogs fighting, Otis takes the bone. That is genius, because Otis Lawrence, he just sat back, let those 2 fight, and now he's up the inside in towards turn number 13 on Istvan Pukki. Leaves him the space on the inside, little bit of wheel banging off the exit of the corner now, and all of a sudden Alvaro Carreton has found himself back in this fight, but headed down in towards turn number 14 for the lead of the race. Otis Lawrence trying to look to the outside line of Istvan Pukki's switchback territory. Can he try go for the move in towards now the 3rd sector? It doesn't look likely at this point in the race, but next time by, it's going to be 2 to go in this race. I mean, we've seen a lull period pretty much since the pit stops, and all of a sudden everything is kicked off in the last lap or so.
It has, because Ronha's now down to 8th. Under pressure also from Bent Sabakon Conye for 9th. And Otis still in the back. Also, we've got Leonard Gertz putting Alvaro Carreton under pressure. So everyone's been put under pressure. And Van Erven, look at that pace he's now got. 2 laps to go. He's got through on Dylan. It was, 18 seconds between him and Dylan. And now, Matthias is flying through the field. He's up into 12th. So we've got 1 pass dropping down the field and 1 zooming up the field as we head on to lap 30 or 31. And Istvan Pukki is still leading from Otis. But Otis has now got to try and get through. He's got, 6 or 7 opportunities left in this race at all. That's all he's got, and he needs to do it sooner or later. Because also we've got Leonard Gertz on the back of Carreton. Also we've got Luke Smith fighting, and that is Ben Sabakonyi through on Thomas Ronha. Then at turn 1, and also Van Erven on the back of Leroy Brown around the outside at turn 4. Gets straight through next for Van Erven. It's Thomas Shooter, and he sends it up the inside at turn 5. Very nice there. And now his teammate, Thomas Ronha, who's going to let him through. And Van Erven now, who was 17 seconds behind then in 15th, up to 9th. So this has worked out really well, and Coldorn has got a penalty.
I mean, is there a potential for a podium for Matthijs van Erven? It's going to be very tricky. He's on the back of Zabrakonyi. These intermediate tyres not in working condition whatsoever. I think the only thing that Matthijs has to a disadvantage is he's only got 6% in the battery, but it's not too strong. Of course, in the wet weather conditions, we have to look to the fight for the lead of this race. We're going to see one of two masterclasses in this Grand Prix. Will it be an overtaking masterclass from Otis Lawrence, or will it be a defensive one from Miss Van Pookie? Is now through turn number 13. Otis Lawrence takes a very wide line through there, trying to prioritise a good exit. Look at how much they're struggling on traction in these wet weather conditions. These intermediate tyres not working at all. Matthijs van Erven now up into 7th. He's nearing the lead fight at this point.
He's at the lead fight, now up into 7th, 1 second behind. And Van Erven, is he impossible for a podium at this rate? Because look how much quicker he is. The Inters are just not holding up anymore. It's a bit like Russia 2021, but instead of it being dries and wets, it's Inters and wets. So look at Van Erven now, through into 6th. Got to get through on Luke Smith, his next victim. Get into 5th. He's going to go up the inside down to turn 20. Very nice. Now he's got Leonard Gertzer, so he's got through on all the people with penalties. He's now going to finish in 5th. But he's got to hope he doesn't get too feisty and end up winning it. Leonard Gertzer's going to be under pressure. Yes, up at the inside in the last corner. Van Erven up into 4th. This is absolutely masterclass from Matthijs van Erven as we head on to the final lap of the race.
This is outrageous at this point. Matthijs van Erven was so far off the back of everyone else, and now look at him off the exit of turn number 3. He's going to get onto the podium. He's ahead of Alvaro Carreton. Matthijs van Erven going to be absolutely laughing at this point, because now off the exit of turn number 5 is Van Pookie. Is going to be defending not from Otis Lawrence, but from Matthijs van Erven. What are we seeing here? In towards the braking zone of turn number 7. Pookie defending massively to the inside line, but Van Erven takes the lead of the race on lap number 31. I do not quite know what I'm witnessing here. Matthijs van Erven, he's played this to perfection. He was well out of the fight, all the way down in what, 16th position at some point. He's now leading this race.
It was 18 seconds behind Warren in 14th. I'm actually speechless. I don't know what to say, but this is... at one point we're saying, right, Matthijs has played this stupidly, it's not worth it all, but he's now leading by 3 seconds because Otis and everyone on the Inters are just scurrying around, just trying to find traction. Otis up the inside into the hairpin at 13, trying to get through on Pookie. Big slide also with Carreton on the back as well, and this is a fight for second now. A lap ago it was a fight for P1, but it's not anymore. And they head into turn 14. Otis going to go around the outside. Pookie going to defend. They're both nearly hit the wall. Otis is...
Oh no!
They're both round!
Oh my gosh! Oh no, carnage! Sorry to cut in there. I mean, carnage. Otis Lawrence without a front wing, and Van Erven's just ran up the road. Luke Smith's on the podium now.
Yeah, and Matthijs van Erven going from absolute the worst strategy ever to the best, comes round the final corner, and he's going to win the Singapore Grand Prix by 10 seconds over Luke Smith. Matthijs into the final corner and takes the victory here at Singapore after being 17th behind by 20 seconds. And Luke Smith, 10 seconds behind, comes to take P2, but it'll be Leonard Gertzer who takes the P2 because of the penalty for Luke Smith. And this could also be a podium for Shanaka Clay. No, it's not. It's 4th. And Otis down to 6th, but Pookie and Otis down into 14. They're both just locked up. They had nothing they could do. But it was Ron Hart, Pookie, Alvaro, and it's ended with Matthijs, Leonard, and Luke.
What if you if you told me that was the finishing order 3 laps ago, I wouldn't have believed a word you were saying. 10 seconds, the gap between Van Erven and Gertzer. I mean, that was I think the biggest gamble I might have ever seen in league racing, to go onto the set of the intermediates. He was down in P10 at the pit stop phase. He didn't have all that much to lose, and by going onto the wet tyres, he just was able to go so much quicker than everyone else in the late stage, where it got to the point they were crawling around the track trying not to put it in the wall. Van Erven was just able to slip on by. It was like watching one of the classic last the first 0% AI challenge, because I mean, you know what, like whatever was going on in this race, I don't know. I'm gonna have to watch it back to actually fully understand what we have witnessed. But you know, what we know Matthijs van Erven, there's going to be no contesting that. I mean,
No,
there's no penalties in the world that could lose him this race.
no.
What a victory from him.
That was, yeah, I'm still speechless. I don't even know what to say. He went from being 20 seconds behind the whole train to then being 11 seconds ahead on the final lap. It was, because, see, it was about lap 29. He come through to take P10, and I thought, actually, you know what? He might get a few positions. At best, he gets fifth because of penalties. Then all of a sudden, he just charges through and leads. Luke Smith, I don't even know where he come from either. He finished third. It was second on track, but he got the penalty. But hopefully, we can get a couple of drivers in for an interview, because that was. I'd like to hear some of the thoughts on that race, because it was absolutely phenomenal. It changed every lap. It changed. Ron was looking for a victory over Pookie. Then all of a sudden, Ron got damaged. Pookie then also gets spun around with Artis at 14. Matthias takes the win. Leonard Gertz up to second. Oh, I've commentated for over a year, and that is probably the one race I've actually been left purely speechless by seeing someone win.
I'm so confused as to what I've just seen. This is what I think my 4th year of being a commentator, and I've been a part of PSGL for ever since season 26, and that was one of the most crazy endings I've ever seen in a race. And Matthijs van Erven, we need to get him in for an interview. What a victory from him. Leonard Gertzer in P2, he drove a stellar race as well. To be fair to him, he was making moves quite often in this race, and I'd love to hear from him too. But Luke Smith in P3, I mean, just look at these starting positions. Van Erven started 13th, wins the race. Leonard Gertzer was in P7, and Luke Smith started in P9. I mean, I have just no clue as to how this race finished. I'll run through the full classification. It's a Williams 4 and 5, Caraton leading Clay, Otis Lawrence in P6, 7th is Wiesel, Jabberconny in 8th, running out the top 10 is Isfan Pookie and Timon Shooter. 11th position for Leroy Brown, Dylan Warren in 12th. Thomas Ronhar, if he didn't get that damage, what a race this would have been for Haas. I mean, it could have been a potential 1-2 for them. He is in, unfortunately, P13. Conor Muir, he went onto the wets a little bit late in this race, but he was able to make up a few places and now finishes in 14th. Alexander Kraft in 15th, 16th for Laminen, then Nordyke in 17th. He actually finished ahead of someone in this race despite pitting very early on. It was Cornelin Gola. I mean, what a disaster for him. I think it was all the screen freezers. Only one retirement from this race. It was Ruben Pedreño after starting on the wrong tyre. But at the end of that one there, Nathan, I mean, so bring us back over to the intermission screen. What an end.
I don't know. To join for the first race of the E-Series for me, that was phenomenal. I don't think we'll expect anything like that, so I'm not expecting anything like this next time. But that was... I don't even know what words. It was absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get anyone for an interview, which is a shame. It'd be nice if we could, but I don't think we will, which is a shame. But still, stellar driver. At the moment, I can't really call who I think deserves driver of the day, because there's so many drivers who deserve it. It's...
I think one name he's got to spring to mind, surely. Matthijs van Erven for driver of the day. I mean, that was a strategic masterclass from him. I was saying it was going to be an overtaking or a defensive masterclass. Strategy didn't even come into my mind. And all of a sudden, Matthijs van Erven, in the last few laps, he takes victory. What an end to this race that we have just witnessed. Oh, perfect. We've got Leonard Gertz. I'll bring us over to the intermission scene. The interview scene now, and we get to talk to the man who finished in P2 at the end of this one. Leonard, can you hear us?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. And Nathan, I'm going to pop off for a second. I'll let you talk to Leonard here.
Yeah, Leonard, great race. Obviously qualified 7th. Did you expect to come home in 2nd?
After that qualifying, not really. I mean, I always knew I was quick in quali, but definitely didn't expect that after this qualifying.
And obviously, we've seen you in PSGL multiple times before. You are a straight track merchant, indeed. So yet again, another great performance. Finishing 2nd, you come on at that. Did you get worried at any point from Matthias? Like, did you think, oh, actually, he's going to be quick now with those wets?
Until 5 laps from the end, I didn't even know he existed in the race, pretty much. And then he just came through everyone. And yeah, it was unexpected.
Yeah, and then obviously coming on to the final few, that's when the rain really came down. it was more about just trying to get to the end, wasn't it, in one piece than anything.
Yeah, I mean, it was so slippery. I think at one point you could only go on full throttle, like on the back straight. You could only go on full throttle, like when you were already braking, pretty much. So it was really just bring the car home, pretty much, and see what happens.
It worked well because we had penalties, we had crashes, and it bumped you up to second. So absolutely amazing race, Leonard. Obviously going into the next round, you excited or well, that's if you're racing, of course.
What's the next circuit?
I don't know myself. I'll be honest.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yep. Well, we're gonna hope anyway. Well, if it's Monaco, you'll enjoy that because you are absolutely amazing at Monaco. We've seen that in F3 last season, I think it was, when you won by 20 seconds.
I'd like that, yeah.
I don't think it will be Monaco though. There's some feeling that Monaco won't be on there, but we'll see. But anyway, Leonard, thanks for joining us. Great performance today, and I hope to see you next time for round 9.
All right, thank you.
And Dan, do we get Matthias in or not?
I've asked him in the Discord. We'll give him a few more minutes if he does want to come in for an interview. But I mean, what a race we have just witnessed there. I don't even know what happened. You know, and there was confusion everywhere. Matthijs van Erven, I mean, it's absolute. We were even, we were saying that it wasn't working at all in the race, and then he completely thrown away his position. But then all of a sudden, the rain just picked up massively in the last 5 laps, and Matthijs van Erven, he didn't need to pit for the wets. He was already on them since the start of the intermediate period, and he's got to have some insane foresight. And I wonder if he went to see like some psychic or something just to let him know the outcome of this race and how that would actually go.
But it was, at one point we were thinking, actually, Ron Haar's going to possibly, Ron Haar was fighting for the win. And I definitely didn't think that it'd be the other Haas taking the win. I thought it would have been Ron Haar or Pookie. Otis then, we thought, actually, Otis is going to take it. It was close, but then the rain tumbled in. Matthias just flew through the field completely. Luke Smith avoided all contact, same as Leonard Gertz, so they came home. Big unfortunate, isn't it, for Luke Smith? Obviously having that penalty compromises P2, but a P3 finish is still not bad. And considering a race clutch are in this battle for second, a P3, they can't moan at that. Edvis Gerald also, they're in 7th. They should be able to jump off on TF10 now, having their second place, and also Haas also going to be able to bump themselves up the field as well, trying to get closer to Parnell and Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the championship hunt is definitely going to be turned on its head after this one, but Haas, it's really unfortunate that Thomas Ronhart had that wing damage, and I mean, I don't really know what actually went on. I think Istvan Pukki just didn't make the corner. Thomas Ronhart was on his outside, and then, he was going to go into the wall either way. So, I'm going to re-quote what someone said. I mean, 2 dogs fighting, the dog takes the bone, and that was Otis Lawrence in this place. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to take the lead from that one. I think this race could have been a different story. If he was able to make the move as early as possible, and Istvan Pukki, because maybe he could have stretched an advantage big enough to where Matthijs van Erven wouldn't be able to overtake on him. But given that Van Erven finished 10 seconds ahead of everyone else, it would have been very difficult to do so to keep him behind.
I've just managed to scroll through and see the qualifying results for Q3. It was Thomas on pole, followed by Pukki, Karas on Otis, Shanaka, and Bentz in 6th, and none of them finished in the top 5, did they?
I think Alvaro Carreton did.
Carreton might have done. Leonard Gertz 7th to 2nd. Codorn 8th, dropped down all the way to the back of the field. What a race that could have been for him as well, if it worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. The screen freezes.
And Luke Smith
just plagued him.
9th up to, I'd say, you could say provisional. You could say 2nd on track, 3rd with the penalty. Also, thank you in the chat, Harvey. Really appreciated, mate. But unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get Matthias in, are we?
No, I don't believe so, unfortunately. So we're not going to hear from Luke Smith either. I mean, so I'm just going to bring up my calendar because I forgot where we're going next week. I mean, I should do
asked
my
Leonard
research.
And he didn't know either. So he's like, oh wow.
Oh dear.
Hopefully it's a good one. So
yeah. Absolutely, I'm just going to have a quick look in the announcement section of the E series. I've got to do this on my phone. Of course, I've got the Discord screen showing your lovely faces, but Yeah, I mean, just what an end to this one this evening. I don't know how to do it. And thank you everyone as well for the really lovely comments in the live chat. I mean, I've seen a few of them talking about the commentary, and all of them have been very nice indeed. So first time working together, Nathan. I mean, I think it's gone quite well.
Yeah, I think it went very well. Definitely better than the last few races. But yeah, I enjoyed that one indeed. And I presume, Dan, that you enjoyed to speak today.
Yeah, it was certainly a fun one this evening, and it was definitely. I think this is contender for race of the season. I think previously,
yes,
we were talking about it being France. I think we were saying was the race of the season, but definitely I think it's been switched on its head, and I'd say this is the race of the season, and it's all thanks to those last few laps.
Yeah, at one point I was sitting here thinking, will this race end? Because absolutely nothing was happening. No one could get through, and then all of a sudden, they thought, actually, you know what? We'll just chuck it upside down. We'll make the rain heavier. We'll make everyone struggle. We'll make everyone get damaged and spin, and well, it created entertainment, that's for sure. Definitely some frustration from Ron Haar, Otis's side, Pookie's side, but then also lots of joy for Luke, Leonard, and Matthias, of course, who still can't believe to say that he won by 11.5 seconds.
To be fair, though, I do think it is a little bit assisted by the fact that there was that big drama on the last lap, and that is one thing that I think we should talk about. Really unlucky that it ended out that way for Istvan Pukki and Otis Lawrence. I'd say it's actually Otis Lawrence that lost out the most, given how given how he was on the outside line. I think he might have actually made the corner. Istvan Pukki just ran too deep on the inside and unfortunately put it in the wall. How different that could have been for Otis Lawrence in this one. If he was able to take a podium, VSR could have been in a fantastic position, but it just wasn't meant to be, sadly.
Yep, big shame. But we've got 2 races left to go. Have you got the calendar yet? So we can see where we're at, because I'll be honest, I was looking for it earlier, I couldn't find it, but we've got 2 races to go. Hopefully the tracks are good, and well, they should be, because so far I think this has been a really nice calendar this season. To be fair, I really liked it. Obviously, I've not commentated them up until now, but we've had some really nice tracks here. Obviously, Canada, one of them, we don't see it all really, do we, in any league racing anymore, which is a shame. But to be fair, and it delivered a good race. So, and then Singapore, I thought it'd be a good race. It's either one of them went really good or really bad, and it definitely proved it was really good. And I've commentated over 30, 40, 50 races altogether, and that is probably more than that. That's probably the one which I'd say is easily in that top 3, top 5.
Yeah, it was a fantastic race this evening, and definitely probably is going to be our race of the season. But next week, everyone, we are headed to Bahrain. Of course, the site of the PSGL F1 PC Tier 1 season. That was the site of the finale. And so definitely a lot of history around this track. I know it's a track that everyone knows quite well. It's typically on every single calendar, at least some point in league racing. So it's definitely going to provide a very exciting race. And then the next Friday after that, we head to Kota to end off this season. Thank you everyone for tuning in this evening. I think I'm going to check the Discord one more time just to see.
It's got to drink beer.
Oh.
And he deserves it.
Fair enough. I think that's fair enough. He deserves to celebrate and have a good one after that one. But that was an incredible showing from him, and he's rewarding himself very accordingly. But thank you everyone for tuning in. I believe that's all we have to talk about tonight. Thank you for coming in to this race, and thank you to Nathan for joining me for the first time. We're really looking forward to the last few races. Next week we head to the Bahrain International Circuit in Sakir for round number 9, where the season is coming to an end. Williams, can they hold on to their substantial lead that they have? We'll have to wait and see, but I believe that is everything from us. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. It is the big red button beneath this stream. As well, follow us on Twitter at PremierSimGL. I believe that it is the same as the Instagram handle as well, PremierSimGL, and you can join our Discord server. The link will be in the description for all of your PSGL and E-Series news. But that is all from us. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time in Bahrain. Thank you and good night.
Good night.